Today, we dive into a case that is as tragic as it is haunting. The sudden disappearance of 22-year-old Mercedes Vega in Arizona. In April 2023, she was last seen leaving her apartment in Tempe. Just hours later, her car was found abandoned. And what investigators uncovered would shock an entire community. Mercedes's story is a chilling reminder of how quickly a normal evening can turn into a nightmare, how safety can be shattered in an instant, and how one young woman's dreams and future were stolen in a way that still demands justice. But the question remains, who was behind this? Was it a random act of violence, or something far more calculated, designed to silence her forever? Watch this video until the end. As we explore Mercedes' final moments together, we'll uncover disturbing evidence and surprising twists that reveal a crime that's darker and more intentional than you could ever imagine. Mercedes Vega was born on March 10, 2001, in Anchorage, Alaska. She loved horses and had a special affection for babies. Finding joy in the simple pleasures of life, in 2007, when she was 6, her mother, Erica, began dating Tom Pillsbury. Over time, she and Tom formed a close bond. Just before Erica and Tom's wedding in 2010, Mercedes gave him a Father's Day card that he still remembers fondly, which said that she loved that he was marrying her mom. This gesture highlighted their strong connection. As she grew up, Mercedes pursued her interests with passion. She played the violin, sang beautifully, and even performed the national anthem at various events. Academically, she excelled, earning straight A's throughout her early school years. Swimming was another of her talents. She felt a strong connection to the ocean, once expressing that her soul belonged in Hawaii. This love for the sea mirrored her free-spirited nature, always seeking places where she felt at peace. Mercedes's family was central to her life. Her parents, Erica and Tom, raised her in a supportive environment, eventually settling in Santan Valley, Arizona. By her early 22nd, Mercedes had moved to Tempe and was living independently in the Aubrey apartments. She worked as an exotic dancer in Phoenix a few nights each week to support herself while pursuing her larger dreams of opening her own gym and becoming a personal trainer. About 3 years before her disappearance, she encountered a traumatic experience. In October 2020, she was the victim of an armed robbery outside her apartment in Phoenix, which led her to relocate to Tempe for a fresh start. She cooperated fully with the police, identified the suspect, and provided an impact statement. This incident showcased her resilience, as she used the experience to strengthen her focus on her independence and ambitions. However, on that ordinary Sunday in April 2023, her life took a tragic turn. On the 16th of April, she had planned to have dinner with friends, a routine social outing amidst her work obligations. However, as the day went on, she informed her friends that she would need to go to the club instead, where she performed a few nights each week. This change in plans became significant, as it marked Mercedes' last known communication. Initially, it seemed like a simple adjustment, but it would later serve as an important detail in the events that unfolded. Surveillance cameras at her apartment complex, the Aubrey, captured footage that helped piece together the end of her evening. Investigators noted that a white 2018 Chevrolet Malibu with a salvage title, a car not belonging to her, was spotted in the parking garage around 8:45 p.m., lingering in the area. Then, at about 9:15 p.m., Mercedes was seen on surveillance video, walking confidently towards her own vehicle in her assigned parking spot. This would become the last recorded image of her in that familiar place. Later evidence from the scene showed signs of a struggle. Blood was found in the parking lot and on the front passenger seat of the car, suggesting that she had been attacked. As time passed, around 9:25 p.m., cameras in the area captured her car pulling into a nearby lot next to a restaurant called Culinary Dropout. Just a short drive from her apartment, the car was parked improperly, with the keys still inside, suggesting it may have been abandoned in a hurry. As the clock struck midnight on the 17th of April, An alarming situation unfolded far from Tempe, in a remote area of desert along Interstate 10 near Tanipa, about 60 miles west, where traffic becomes sparse and the landscape stretches wide. A passing driver noticed something unusual off the freeway. A vehicle had gone off the road and was in a ditch, with flames flickering inside. Concerned, the driver stopped and called 911 to report what he had seen, providing crucial information for the investigation. During the call, he informed the dispatcher that he wanted to report a car on fire that was off the side of the northbound lanes on Iminus 10 around the 85 mile marker. He stated that it was down in the bushes but that he saw flames inside the vehicle. He also mentioned that there might be people outside the vehicle and that he believed he saw at least one person. This detail suggested some activity around the car just before or during the fire, adding complexity to the investigation. The dispatchers recorded the report and quickly sent emergency crews to the scene, where firefighters worked to extinguish the flames engulfing the Chevrolet Malibu, which had been in Mercedes's garage just hours earlier. After the fire was controlled, responders looked inside the burned car and made a grim discovery: a body in the back seat, severely affected by the heat and smoke. Further examination of the vehicle revealed 2 bottles of bleach in the front seat, lighter fluid, and latex gloves, which indicated possible foul play rather than an accident. The car was not reported stolen, and its salvage status complicated efforts to uncover its history. Authorities secured the area, blocking off the ditch and roadside to collect any evidence the fire hadn't destroyed. Later that same day, they confirmed the victim's identity through fingerprints, linking the case back to Tempe. The victim was identified as Mercedes Vega, who was far from home under mysterious circumstances. Detectives from the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office took over the investigation, analyzing the 911 call for any auditory clues and interviewing the caller for more details about his view of the scene. They carefully mapped out the timeline, starting from garage footage, showing 2 cars leaving together, to the abandoned vehicle near a restaurant where the keys were still inside, and finally to the burning car in the desert. Each aspect raised new questions about how Mercedes had ended up there and what had occurred during those hours. The site itself painted a grim picture. The Chevrolet Malibu was awkwardly positioned in the ditch, with its interior burned and the backseat area showing significant damage. Responders noted the position of the body, observing that it appeared to have been placed there rather than being the result of a crash. The bleach bottles, one of which was partially used, were found in the front area, alongside a container of lighter fluid, suggesting a possible attempt to speed up a fire. Besides the individual who called 911, no other witnesses reported seeing the car on the road, but traffic cameras along Interstate 10 were reviewed for any evidence of its westward journey. Forensic teams examined the Chevrolet Malibu, which was stored in a secure lot, in hopes of collecting DNA and fingerprint evidence from the ashes. The caller mentioned seeing someone outside, prompting searches in the surrounding brush for footprints or discarded items. Though the dry terrain made it difficult to find clear tracks, Mercedes's phone records were subpoenaed to trace her last communications, and investigators inspected her car's interior for clues beyond the bloodstains. That evening, around 7:00 p.m., Mercedes's parents, Erica and Tom, returned home from a vacation in the Caribbean to find police at their door. They asked whether Mercedes lived with them, and after Erica repeatedly questioned if she was okay, they delivered the devastating news of her death. Caught completely off guard, especially after their last phone conversation during their trip, they experienced profound heartbreak, with Erica describing it as feeling like her soul was being ripped out. In their grief, the family shared details about Mercedes's habits to assist investigators in understanding what might have led her into danger that night. With a timeline established for the tragic evening, detectives from the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office faced the challenging task of piecing together how a young woman could disappear from her secure apartment garage and be found in a burned-out car approximately 60 miles away. The investigation continued for months, then years. With many challenges testing their patience and resources, forensic teams meticulously sifted through the ash of the charred Malibu for DNA, fingerprints, and any overlooked items. It was a slow process. The autopsy report from the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's Office was not released until October 2023, 6 months after the body was discovered. It revealed that Mercedes had suffered a gunshot wound to her arm, multiple blows to her head, causing blunt force trauma, and chemical burns from bleach poured on her face and throat. Tragically, she was still alive when the fire started, with the official cause of death listed as smoke inhalation and thermal injuries, classified as a homicide. This delay in the findings added to the frustration, compounded by the slow progress of the case, which saw few public updates for over a year. Investigators interviewed those close to Mercedes. Focusing on her routines and relationships, her parents emphasized her independence and reported no known conflicts in her life. Although they couldn't ignore the lasting impact of a prior armed robbery in Phoenix, they felt that the investigation lagged, partly due to biases. Tom expressed in interviews that her part-time job as a dancer at a club seemed to diminish her importance in the eyes of the police. Sergeant Joaquin Enriquez countered that all cases are treated fairly, regardless of profession. Friends and colleagues from the club spoke highly of her reliability, confirming her last-minute shift plan and noting she had no visible enemies there. They mentioned that she had been cautious after previous incidents, but there were no recent warnings of danger. The investigation turned its focus to Mercedes's past, particularly an armed robbery on October 12, 2020, which had left her so shaken that she moved to Tempe. Early that morning, a man confronted her at gunpoint outside her apartment in Phoenix, demanding her belongings. He got away with cash and personal items. Phoenix police conducted an investigation, and Mercedes fully cooperated, identifying Cujo Young as the robber in a lineup and providing a statement that detailed her trauma. Cujo Young, who faces armed robbery charges, has faced numerous delays in the case, largely due to changing attorneys and negotiating plea deals. He fluctuated between rejecting and accepting plea deals. Mercedes was prepared to testify against him, with a trial date set for mid-April 2023. Court records indicate she was scheduled to testify on April 17, the day her body was discovered, although some reports suggest this was the day before she went missing. The timing of these events raised questions about whether the upcoming testimony influenced the situation. During the crucial hours in April 2023, when Mercedes was kidnapped and murdered, Cujo was not at either location. As records indicate, he was not in custody due to delays in a robbery case. He had no confirmed presence in Tempe, where Mercedes was taken, or in Tonopah, where her body was found. Theories of random crime diminished while the idea of a planned attack gained traction. Family and friends emphasized Mercedes's increased caution since 2020, highlighting the importance of her connections. Erica expressed her frustration in the media, suggesting the motive was to prevent testimony. As the investigation progressed, uncovering digital evidence and forensic links, the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office eventually made arrests, revealing long-awaited names. The first significant breakthrough occurred on November 11, 2024, when Sincere Hayes was arrested in Hamilton County, Tennessee. At that time, Sincere, a 22-year-old resident of Chattanooga, was already in custody for unrelated charges. Maricopa County Sheriff's Office detectives connected him to the case through a fingerprint that matched one found on a bloody plastic grocery bag in Mercedes's abandoned car, a match that had remained unresolved until his arrest in May 2024 added his prints to the database. After being extradited to Arizona later that month, Sincere had his first court appearance where he pleaded not guilty. The judge set a cash bond of $2 million. During questioning, he admitted to knowing Cujo Young from their hometown of Chattanooga and verified that he had traveled to Arizona for business, though he refused to disclose details about it. Sincere had a history of legal issues that began at age 18, with his adult record starting in May 2021 in DeKalb County, Alabama, for possessing a stolen firearm and a banned substance, which led to an indictment in February 2022. This case was dismissed on April 10, 2023, just days before Mercedes's death. After he failed to attend his arraignment, Although the warrant was later lifted, in May 2024, Chattanooga police arrested Censera again following a report of shots fired, discovering he had several weapons, one of which was stolen. After being released on a $5,000 bond, he was arrested weeks later by Hamilton County Sheriff's Office for DUI, speeding, and illegal possession of a firearm. The investigation expanded further in June 2025 when Jared DeMarcus Gray, a 25-year-old from Tennessee, was arrested in Catoosa County, Georgia. Jared's fingerprint was found on a plastic cup inside the burned Malibu, where Mercedes' body was located. He awaited extradition to Arizona while being held on unrelated charges, with prosecutors seeking a $2 million cash-only bond. In interviews, Jared claimed he was in Arizona for business, but denied knowing Censera or Cudjoe, despite travel records showing he and Censera flew together from Tennessee to Phoenix on March 3, 2023, and took a Greyhound bus back on April 18, the day after the fire. Although Jared's criminal history was less extensive than Censera's, he was tied to the crime scene through DNA and cell phone data that matched Tonopah's route. On July 24, 2025, a grand jury in Maricopa County indicted Cudjoe Young, 29, who was already in custody on an unrelated warrant. Cudjoe appeared in court shortly after, stating he would represent himself and acknowledging the judge's warning about being held to the same standards as a lawyer. He pleaded not guilty, with the judge setting his bond at $2 million cash only. Cudjoe's history was significant. He was identified by Mercedes in a 2020 armed robbery where she had picked him from a lineup after being held at gunpoint outside her Phoenix apartment. This case faced numerous delays, often due to Cudjoe changing attorneys, causing frustration for her family. Additionally, Cudjoe was facing 10 counts in a separate investigation into banned substance trafficking, accused of running a nationwide operation involving illegal banned substances, money laundering, and conspiracy. All three men faced serious charges. Censera was charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, armed robbery, theft of a vehicle, arson, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and hindering prosecution. Prosecutors sought the death penalty for him, citing the brutality and depraved motive of the crime. Jared was charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, armed robbery, and vehicle theft. Cudjoe faced charges for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, first-degree murder, armed robbery, arson, and theft of transportation. The main motive in this case was to silence a witness. Investigators believe that Cudjoe planned this scheme to stop Mercedes from testifying against him in the 2020 robbery trial. Records indicate he paid for the flights of Censera and Jared using a credit card, hired accomplices to retrieve the Malibu car under a false name, and contacted someone to collect a package near the site of a fire that night. This deliberate effort to eliminate her as a threat connected the three individuals, turning a past crime into a serious conspiracy. Censera was the first to be arrested, and his case progressed steadily, although slowly. After being extradited and entering a not guilty plea in late 2024, prosecutors announced in May 2025 their intention to seek the death penalty if convicted. They cited the brutality of the crime and its goal of obstructing justice by silencing a witness. Censera's lawyers pushed back during court meetings, arguing against the death penalty and questioning the strength of the forensic evidence, such as the fingerprint found on a grocery bag. They emphasized his youth and lack of prior violent offenses, portraying his involvement as minor rather than significant. A tentative trial date for Censera was initially set for July 31, 2025, but court documents revealed it had been postponed due to ongoing evidence, review, and motions. With the next status hearing planned for later that year, Jared's case was delayed as he awaited extradition from Georgia after his arrest in June 2025, where he was held on a $2 million bond. His case revolves around fingerprints found on a plastic cup in the Malibu and matching DNA evidence. His defense indicated plans to challenge the integrity of the evidence, claiming possible contamination or errors in identification, and pointed out his limited criminal history as reason to doubt his leading role. The state requested fast extradition, arguing that the interconnected nature of the cases required them to proceed together in Maricopa County. Cujo's involvement complicated matters further because of his connection to the earlier robbery. He was indicted on July 24, 2025, facing the same main charges, with prosecutors claiming he was the mastermind behind the plot. He also used a credit card to book flights and directed others to obtain the Malibu under a fake name. Cujo pleaded not guilty during his murder arraignment on the 1st of August, alongside Sinceri, and maintained his innocence while questioning the conspiracy claims in brief statements. For the Mercedes family, including Eric's and Tom Pillsbury, these developments elicited mixed feelings amid their deep sorrow. They regularly attended court hearings and voiced their frustrations about the system's failures to protect Mercedes like their daughter, who had moved after the robbery only to face further dangers. Erica described the waiting as torturous, stating in interviews that the family felt anxious while waiting for justice. The announcement of the death penalty brought them some relief, with Tom noting it lightened their burden and confirmed they weren't alone in their fight. However, the pain of their loss continued. They scattered Mercedes's ashes in Hawaii, her favorite place, and Alaska, honoring the locations that held significance for her. In the months that followed, the family dedicated their efforts to advocacy, determined to keep her memory alive. They collaborated with Silent Witness and engaged with the media to seek answers and justice. A GoFundMe page remains active to help cover their expenses and support their efforts. They welcome any contributions from those who wish to assist. Currently, all three defendants, Cujo Young, Sincere Hayes, and Jared Gray, are entangled in the court system, having been indicted and pleaded not guilty. Their cases are still actively under judicial review, and the legal process continues. For everyone following this story, it is not over yet. The pursuit of justice is still in progress, and the final outcome has yet to be determined. Joanna Simpson was born in 1964. Her wealthy family lived in Yorkshire, UK, where she spent most of her childhood. Joanna attended an all-girls primary school and completed several grades before her family decided to move. The Simpsons relocated to Laxey on the Isle of Man after her father sold his construction company. After finishing local school, Joanna went to Oxford High School and then pursued business studies at Bath University. She was quite popular among her peers, was known as a well-mannered, kind, and optimistic girl. She willingly supported everyone she communicated with, which attracted people to her. Fellow students always crowded around her, eager to spend time together. Naturally, there were always young people in this group who were looking for her attention. Despite this, Joanna was more focused on her work and career. She wanted to establish herself before starting a family. She decided to get married in 1994 when she turned 30. Her husband also came from a wealthy family. Together, they bought a large house in Ascot, which was in a derelict state and required significant repairs. At that time, they did not have children, so the choice of such a large house seemed excessive to some. They lived there alone, not far from Windsor, where the royal family's castle was located. Additionally, Legoland was nearby, making this location appear to be a great option for expanding the family. However, Joanna was in no hurry to do so. She planned to convert part of the house into a guest house so that relatives and friends could visit often. Her husband supported her aspirations, but perhaps he wanted to have children. After 3 years of marriage, her husband decided to end their relationship. It seemed that this decision stemmed from his disappointment over not having children. Joanna was shocked by this decision. Her friends noticed how depressed she had become and wanted to help her. One of her close friends was a senior flight attendant and had a flight planned to South Africa. She invited Joanna to accompany her, hoping that a change of scenery would help Joanna regain her spirits. Joanna agreed. As it turned out, this decision was fateful. During the flight, she met a man named Robert Brown, who was the pilot of the British Airways airline on which she was traveling. Robert was an avid runner. He had been a British cross-country champion 3 times, which he was very proud of. It seemed they had a lot in common, and an affair began. Joanna retained ownership of the house after her first marriage, as she had invested most of the money into it. She and her new lover moved in together in September 1998. They began to think about marriage. By Christmas, Robert proposed. When everything happened so quickly, Joanna was usually more cautious, but not this time. After getting engaged, they married in February 1999. This rush surprised many, including Joanna's parents, who had only seen Robert a few times by that point. They did not have a good impression of him, believing he was too arrogant and unable to offer their daughter the love she deserved. However, it was futile to dissuade Joanna. She was independent and old enough to make her own decisions. The only thing her parents could do was encourage her to draft a prenuptial agreement before the wedding. The Simpsons believed this relationship might end quickly and did not want their daughter to worry about a potential divorce or risk losing part of her property. The newlyweds did not want to attract too much attention or organize an overly lavish ceremony. Afterward, they immediately traveled to South Africa, the country where they had first met. Joanna hoped to have an unforgettable honeymoon, but within the first few days of the trip, she began to doubt the soundness of her choice. Robert treated the hotel staff with such arrogance that Joanna felt uncomfortable. She had never witnessed her partner behaving so rudely before. After returning from her honeymoon, Joanna called her mother to express her worries. She admitted she was questioning her decision to marry Robert, realizing she didn't know him well enough. She was disturbed by his behavior during the honeymoon and feared his rudeness might eventually be directed at her. Although she began to see her marriage as a mistake, Joanna didn't end the relationship right away after returning from South Africa. She still hoped she could change him. This decision was likely influenced by the pregnancy she discovered after the trip. Like many women, she believed that having a baby would encourage Robert to become more attentive and caring as a father. However, Robert's actions seemed to indicate otherwise, undermining her hopes. Instead of becoming more considerate when he learned that his wife was pregnant, he grew even ruder and more disrespectful. This negative behavior also affected her relatives and friends. Joanna, however, did not want a divorce because she feared that their child would grow up without a father, which she thought would be a major problem. When their first son, Alex, was born, things changed only slightly. A few months later, Joanna became pregnant again and gave birth to their daughter, Katie, but this second child did not improve Robert's behavior. Although he did not physically harm Joanna, which may have prevented a breakup, their family and friends could see how much he was psychologically hurting her. Robert was toxic and rude to Joanna's family, friends, which caused her a lot of distress. Over time, their differences became more apparent. It was clear they should not have been together. Joanna recognized this, but their children made it difficult for them to separate. After the birth of her first child, she often said their marriage would not last and that divorce was unavoidable. She tried to endure the situation for 8 years, but eventually realized she couldn't continue like this. Her final decision came after her husband revealed his disturbing thoughts, including violent fantasies about harming her and their children. He contemplating end one's own life by crashing a plane. Feeling terrified, Joanna filed for divorce in 2007. From that moment on, Robert's behavior worsened significantly. He began to openly express his strong dislike for Joanna's loved ones and even for Joanna herself. He started to manipulate her by hinting at the possibility of end one's own life. When that tactic failed, he began making indirect threats about harming Joanna and their children. Joanna was uncertain about whether to take his words seriously or see them as mere manipulation. She suspected that Robert was fabricating these threats to pressure her into withdrawing her divorce application. He told his friends that he didn't want to distance himself from the children. However, due to his job, which required him to travel frequently, he often spent weeks abroad, leaving little opportunity for him to connect with them. Despite his negative feelings about the separation, Robert never changed his behavior in a way that would make Joanna reconsider her decision to divorce. After Joanna filed for divorce, they continued to live together for a few months. An incident later made Joanna realize that her decision was justified. One evening, while they were putting their children to bed, a conflict erupted. Robert falsely accused Joanna of cheating, a claim he regularly made without any evidence. Joanna, who was fully committed to caring for their children, had no time for an affair. She attempted to defend herself, but her efforts seemed in vain. The argument escalated in the kitchen, and at one point, Robert grabbed a knife, confronted her. He even pressed the blade against her throat, threatening to harm her. Despite the serious situation, Joanna remained composed. She explained that any desire to harm her was illogical because her husband knew she was a good mother. Killing her would leave their children without either parent. Joanna pointed out that if Robert acted violently, he would likely face imprisonment. Eventually, she persuaded him to put down the knife. The following day, Joanna shared the incident with her mother and some friends. They all agreed she should report it to the police because it was a serious matter. They observed that Robert's behavior had become erratic and dangerous since she filed for divorce. Joanna was worried that if she reported her husband, it would negatively affect their children, so she wanted to avoid putting them under that stress. She thought the situation would improve on its own. After his aggressive outburst, she spoke to him again and made it clear that their relationship could not be repaired. He accepted this reality. Now, Joanna insisted that Robert move out of her house because she felt that living together could be unsafe for everyone. However, he refused to leave, saying he would not change his residence. Robert enjoyed living in a large house and a comfortable lifestyle. They even offered him money to help him buy an apartment, but he remained steadfast in his decision. Many believed he was holding out for a better financial offer since Joanna came from a wealthy background. Robert was offered progressively larger sums of money until he finally agreed to move out. This decision brought Joanna relief. She no longer felt threatened. They shared custody of their children, and Joanna was waiting for the divorce to be finalized. However, a heated argument erupted over how to divide their house. Despite their prenuptial agreement, Robert refused to give up the property. Unfortunately, they still had to communicate about visits with their son and daughter. They lived apart, and Robert even started dating a flight attendant from his job. Not long into their relationship, she got pregnant. Joanna initially thought this was good news, believing it would help Robert move on from her, but she was mistaken. On November 1, 2010, one of Joanna's close friends received a call from her children's school because Joanna's kids had not shown up. The teachers tried to reach Joanna but could not get a response. They eventually contacted her friend, who was unsure of Joanna's whereabouts. Joanna had planned to fly to the island of Man to visit her parents, leaving uncertainty about when she vanished or what had happened to the children, 9 and 10-year-olds. After receiving a call from the school, Joanna's friend reached out to her mother. The mother mentioned that Joanna should have returned to Ascot after their trip to Isle of Man. Although she hadn't talked to Joanna on her return day, the call made her anxious, so she attempted to contact her daughter. To her dismay, there was no response. Unable to locate Joanna, they decided to notify the police. By this time, Robert had already arranged a meeting with law enforcement, an appointment to discuss a serious family incident in which he was involved. After reviewing the statements, the detectives decided to visit the home of Joanna to check. When they arrived, no one was there. They repeated knocking went unanswered. The officers chose to force the door open to gain entry. Once inside, they quickly spotted suspicious stains in the hallway that appeared to be blood. Despite a thorough search, they found no evidence of Joanna. There were no signs of anyone, including the children. The police left the house without any leads and returned to the station, where they awaited Robert's arrival for the scheduled meeting. When he arrived, he oddly refused to answer any questions about his wife. This was surprising as he had originally contacted the police and requested the meeting. Due to Joanna's ongoing disappearance, the decision was made to arrest Robert. They intended to conduct a more detailed search of the large property where Joanna lived. The situation remained puzzling, and they were not in a rush to file charges against him. The authorities started searching the entire area while also talking to Joanna's family. They all insisted that she couldn't have simply vanished and had no intention of taking her children anywhere. However, Joanna's relatives expressed negative views about Robert, convinced that he was the only one who could be involved in her disappearance. On the first day of the search, the only verified information was that Robert had taken the children to his brother's house. Joanna's family found some comfort in knowing that Alex and Katie were safe. On November 2, 2010, Robert was questioned again. Whenever the detectives asked him about the events of October 31st, he mostly responded without elaborating. The police then changed their strategy and started discussing everyday topics, which made him more engaged. He excitedly talked about his passion for running. However, when the conversation turned to Joanna, he became withdrawn and anxious. He described his marriage with her but focused on criticizing her, calling her a spoiled child, trying to cast her in a negative light. He repeatedly pointed out that Joanna and her family were financially stable, suggested that they did not understand the struggles of earning money. By the end of the conversation, the police felt that Robert disliked her, particularly because the Simpsons were wealthier than he was. Robert grew up in a modest family in Edinburgh. His father worked at the docks, and his mother was employed by a bank. While they managed their finances well and met their needs, they were not as financially secure as Joanna's family. Robert, a pilot earning around £150,000 a year, had few reasons to complain about his life. Still, he often expressed dissatisfaction with his situation. The detective spent a considerable amount of time discussing various abstract topics with Robert, during which he was quite talkative. However, when they inquired about Joanna and the events of October 31st, he repeatedly said he had no comment. When the detectives expressed confusion, Robert explained that he was experiencing a mental blockage, making it difficult for him to answer those questions. Despite their persistent efforts to encourage him to speak, the detectives were unable to get any more information, forcing them to continue their investigation elsewhere. Joanna's house was extensively searched, revealing additional blood in the living room and in various spots in the courtyard and driveway. The arrangement of the bloodstains indicated that her body might have been relocated. All samples were gathered for testing, which later verified that the blood matched Joanna's. Authorities suspected that Robert had murdered his ex-wife, but the reason for his alleged crime was still unclear. 3 years after their breakup, Robert had begun a new life with another woman. Despite this, he expressed concern for Joanna's financial situation. He had signed a prenuptial agreement, which meant he was not obligated to worry about her finances after their divorce and would not receive any financial support. However, it became clear that Joanna had not been transparent about her family's financial status. Even after they separated, Robert occasionally returned to her home while she was away. He persuaded his children to provide him with a new security code for the alarm system, granting him unrestricted access to the house. Robert's main focus was on his ex-wife's financial documents. He became fixated on the belief that Joanna had significant amounts of money in different accounts. At one point, his imagination ran wild, leading him to believe she possessed up to £25 million, which he thought he could claim if it weren't for their prenuptial agreement. Historically, the British legal system did not recognize these agreements, leading to inevitable legal disputes. However, starting from October 20, 2010, prenuptial agreements began to be acknowledged without extra bureaucratic hurdles. As a result, in the case of a divorce, Robert would not be able to claim any of his wife's wealth, and he was aware of this reality. The next court hearing for the divorce case was set for November 8, 2007, and it seemed likely to be their final meeting before the marriage was officially ended. This context may explain why Robert chose to confront his wife a week earlier. On Sunday, October 31st, Alex and Katie spent the whole day with their father. He was supposed to bring them back to their mother, Joanna, who had been eagerly preparing for their return. She missed them and had baked a chocolate cake as well as made their favorite dish. Joanna usually invited a friend to join her for such occasions because she felt uneasy being alone with her ex, but this time her friend couldn't make it, leaving Joanna to welcome Alex and Katie by herself. The police spoke to the children of Joanna, who provided key details about the situation. The argument between the parents started when Robert returned Alex and Katie to their mother around 4 p.m. Although the children were in a different room and couldn't see what was happening, they heard sounds that seemed like physical violence, described as dull thuds. After a while, the noises stopped. Then, Robert carried Joanna out of the room and placed her in the trunk of his car. He told the children that their mother had fallen and was hurt, so he needed to take her to the hospital. After closing the trunk, he instructed Alex and Katie to get in the car, drove them to his new girlfriend's home, where they stayed. Robert left them there and did not come back until around 7 p.m. When he returned, Joanna was not with him. He avoided answering Alex's questions directly. It became clear that Robert's actions during the 3 hours he was unaccounted for were a mystery, as was Joanna's whereabouts. Later, the police interviewed Robert again, but his answers remained the same. He was questioned a total of 9 times and never mentioned October 31st or anything about his ex-wife. After the final interview, he asked to speak privately with his lawyer. They went into a separate office. About 20 minutes later, his lawyer returned and read a statement in which Robert admitted to killing his ex-wife. Robert explained that he and Joanna had been arguing over their children's education. At one point, he lost control, remembered hitting her several times before deciding to take the children home and rush Joanna away. However, after, he realized that Joanna had already died. In a panic, Robert decided to dump the body and hide it in the woods. His explanation didn't seem credible because Robert could have immediately taken his wife to the hospital. It was also unclear why he chose to hide her in the trunk instead of placing Joanna in the car. It appeared that Robert recognized that Joanna was dead and wanted to shield the children from the sight of their mother, so he concealed her in the trunk. He eventually agreed to lead the investigators to the location where he had hidden Joanna's body. They indeed discovered the body of Joanna at the spot he indicated. It was clear that without Robert's confession, finding the body would have been nearly impossible. He took great care in transporting Joanna several kilometers away from the closest road and into the thick, secluded, near Legoland Windsor woods. There, he dug a deep hole, carefully leveled it, and covered it with leaves to hide any trace of what had happened. The police did not believe Robert because the hole was very deep and showed no signs of freshly dug soil. They estimated that he would have had to remove about 400 kilograms of soil beforehand, which would have taken a significant amount of time. Additionally, the ground was already frozen, making it even more challenging to dig. Given these factors, it seemed impossible that he could have done all this in just 3 hours, and they suspected he had disposed of the soil elsewhere. This suggested he had likely dug a grave in advance, supporting the theory of a carefully planned murder. They found Simpson's body in a black bag inside a plastic box buried underground. Later, Alex and Katie visited the site to lay flowers in memory of their mother. They mentioned they knew the area well and even had a secret hideout nearby. The last time they were there was during the holidays when they were visiting their father. It was likely during that time that he began digging a hole for his ex-wife while the children played in their hideout. Robert continued to assert that he did not plan Joanna's murder. He claimed it was an accident, stating that the stress from a lengthy and challenging divorce caused him to lose control. His lawyer argued that he acted out of passion, which could lead to a lighter sentence for him. However, a forensic examination revealed that Joanna sustained at least 14 blows to the head with a blunt object. The weapon, a hammer with a nail puller, was found at the site where her body was buried. If Robert had not intended to kill her, why did he bring the murder weapon into the house? He later explained that he took the hammer from his shed and secretly placed it in his daughter's backpack, but he could not provide a reason for this. Furthermore, other items discovered with the hammer, such as a protective suit, plastic shoe covers, and rubber gloves, suggested he had planned the crime. After the murder, he removed the CCTV unit from the house along with the hammer and disposed of both, indicating that he had carefully prepared for the act and behaved quite rationally. On May 11, 2011, Brown appeared at Reading Crown Court for a 10-day trial. He denied murdering Joanna but pleaded guilty to manslaughter due to diminished responsibility. The defense presented a psychiatric report indicating that Brown was experiencing a psychotic disorder when he killed her. Initially, a defense psychiatrist diagnosed him with stress-related adjustment disorder. The psychiatrist explained to the jury that significant stressors in Brown's life, including a difficult divorce, contributed to this condition, leading to mental and emotional instability that affected his self-control. However, Philip Joseph, a forensic psychiatrist for the prosecution, disagreed with the defense's assessment. After meeting with Brown in prison, Joseph described him as an intelligent man and a resilient person. He characterized Brown as a controlled person and noted that if Brown were unable to handle stress, it would be challenging for him to continue working as an airline pilot. On the first day of the trial, one of Joanna's friends gave evidence regarding a previous knife incident, when Brown had stabbed Joanna in the chest. In court, Brown denied that this had happened. The trial concluded on May 24. On the murder charge, the jury returned a not guilty verdict. Robert Brown was convicted of manslaughter. He was sentenced to 26 years in prison, including 2 years for obstructing a police investigation. Simpson's family and friends described the failure to convict of murder as a miscarriage of justice. Robert is eligible for mid-term release, with the remainder of his sentence suspended and monitored by the National Probation Service. In March 2023, as Robert could have been released in early November, Simpson's family and friends launched a campaign against it, citing the Police, Crime, Sentencing in Courts Act 2022. This act allows the Attorney General to block the release of any prisoner they believe poses a serious risk to the public. The campaign received support from former Lord Chancellor and Justice Secretary Sir Robert Buckland, former Home Secretary Priti Patel, Jess Phillips, the then Shadow Minister for Domestic Violence and Safeguarding, and Carrie Johnson, an anti-domestic violence campaigner and wife of former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. On October 10, Justice Minister Alex Chalk KCMP announced that Robert would not be automatically released from prison but would instead be referred to the parole board. Robert challenged this decision in the High Court, but he was unsuccessful, arguing that Chalk had overturned a decision made by the judge at the original trial. Try to turn pain into strength. Joanna's mother and friend Hetty Barkworth Nanton was awarded a CBE in the 2024 New Year Honors for services to those affected by domestic violence and murder. Addiction can completely dominate a person's mind and will, leading them to engage in disturbing, harmful behaviors. This dependency can stem from various sources, such as alcohol, banned substance, gambling, or even unhealthy relationships, and its impacts can be equally damaging. While some people eventually recognize that they have become trapped by their addictions, many others ignore the problem. Unfortunately, this denial often leads to a worsening situation. The tragic story of Donna Munda and Ghulam Munda is not an isolated case. In 2005, it sent shockwaves through the peaceful town of Hermitage. They was well known and admired by locals, almost like celebrities. Ghulam was a respected physician who owned his clinic, while Donna was exceptionally beautiful and nearly 24 years younger than him. To everyone who knew them, they appeared to have a perfect and successful relationship. However, on a warm day in May, a single gunshot shattered this facade, revealing a much darker reality marked by betrayal, dependency, and greed. Ghulam grew up in the slums of Gujarat, India. From a young age, he faced the harsh realities of poverty and hunger. These tough conditions shaped his strong character, motivated him to escape poverty and create a better life for himself. He worked hard, focused on excellence, and aspiring to become a doctor. After completing high school, Ghulam was accepted into a medical university, where he quickly became one of the top students. His hard work paid off when he was offered an internship at a prestigious clinic in the United States. There, he worked in the urology department and quickly gained a reputation as a promising young specialist with a bright future. After his internship, Ghulam received an attractive job offer and chose to remain in the U.S. He also began applying for U.S. citizenship. By the mid-1970s, he had moved to Hermitage, Pennsylvania, a small town with a population of just over 16,000. There, he opened his own clinic specializing in urological care, his career quickly flourished. Ghulam became a top professional, utilizing advanced technology and the latest equipment in his practice. His clinic gained a reputation as one of the best in the state. He accepted the most difficult and seemingly hopeless cases, attracting patients from both near and far, including overseas. Dr. Ghulam was well respected not only for his medical skills but also for his kindness. He frequently provided free medical care and often paid for expensive medications for patients who couldn't afford them. His compassion was rooted in his own challenging childhood, which motivated him to help others in need. With a prosperous medical practice, Ghulam enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle. He purchased an opulent home in a prestigious area and embraced a life filled with enjoyment. He believed in making the most of life and investing in what made him happy, such as gourmet food, traveling, luxury watches, rare collectibles, high-end cars, and spending time with attractive companions. In his 40s, Ghulam was still single when he noticed a young woman named Donna walking down the street and fell for her immediately. Donna was 24 years younger than him. She came from a religious Catholic family and had just graduated from high school when she met him. At first, she was hesitant about his interest, but over time, she accepted his generous gifts and let him pursue her. Donna's family struggled financially and couldn't afford a prestigious college education. When Ghulam found out about her situation, he offered to pay for her tuition because she wanted to work in healthcare. He supported her journey to become a registered nurse and later funded her master's degree in anesthesiology. Donna and her partner's romantic, Ghulam, relationship started several years after their initial meeting. Interestingly, even though they had strong religious values, Donna's parents accepted their relationship. They appreciated the kind, generous doctor who had helped support their daughter's education and overall well-being. Donna later became a highly skilled nurse anesthetist, secured a job at a prominent medical center. Ghulam continued to encourage her ambitions, supported her career advancement. They lived in Ghulam's luxurious home, where he gave Donna to an expensive car, lavish jewelry, and trips to fancy vacation destinations. When Donna turned 30, Ghulam, who was 54 at the time, proposed to her, and she accepted. They celebrated their engagement with an extravagant wedding ceremony that had over 150 guests, including family, friends, and many of Ghulam's business associates. It appeared that they were on their way to a long, happy life together. Initially, everything seemed perfect. Donna and Ghulam gained fame as local celebrities and were probably the richest people in their town. They enjoyed a luxurious life, traveling frequently, and the doctor generously indulged his much younger wife. They frequently attended charity galas and was always spotted together at public events. Donna chose to prioritize her career and took her time before starting a family. Ghulam supported her decision without any pressure. Many saw Donna as cheerful, friendly, and lively, which was the image she projected, until tragedy started to turn her life upside down. At 37 years old, Donna lost her father after a long illness, which hit her hard. She had always had a close bond with him, referring to herself as a daddy's girl and seeing him as her main source of strength. After he died, Donna became deeply depressed. She isolated herself from others. Ghulam did his best to support her, fulfilling all her wishes, including a trip to Hawaii to help her feel better. However, nothing seemed to work except for antidepressants, which she started taking in larger doses. Donna immersed herself in work, hoping to find solace in her daily routine, but it didn't truly alleviate her suffering. A few years later, she was diagnosed with a kidney condition that caused intense back pain. Even though her husband was a well-known urologist, he couldn't fully relieve her discomfort. The treatments only offered temporary relief, and her symptoms kept coming back, often worse than before. In her desperation, Donna started to rely heavily on strong pain medication. She began secretly taking doses from her workplace, where she was responsible for managing and administering medications. This made it easy for her to take small amounts without being noticed. She would quietly use portions meant for patients, just enough so that no one would realize. Together with her antidepressants, the prescription painkillers dulled her physical and emotional pain. Donna felt abandoned by the world and overwhelmed by her struggles. As a result, she began to distance herself from Ghulam, even though he genuinely cared for her. Things quickly deteriorated. She became increasingly dependent on her medications, to the point where she could not function without them. This led her to raise her dosages and steal more often. Eventually, her behavior attracted attention. She was caught in the act, and there was no way to deny it. Her dismissal from the clinic was shocking, and she faced multiple criminal charges. Ghulam quickly intervened to defend his wife, managed the situation to safeguard her reputation. Thanks to his actions, their friends and family never learned about Donna's problem. Rather than facing jail time, she paid a hefty fine and committed to rehabilitation at a specialized center. Ghulam chose the facility himself and organized Donna's stay, informing relatives, neighbors, and friends that she was on vacation. No one doubted him. He stayed calm, convincing, continued to appear cheerful and friendly. At the rehab center, Donna, who is now in her 40s, met a younger man named Damien Bradford, who was 23 years old. Damien had a history of multiple offenses for distributing illegal substances and ended up in rehab after a serious overdose that almost killed him. Despite their age difference, Donna and Damien quickly became very close, spent a lot of time together. They faced similar challenges. Although their relationship was unexpected, their bond deepened rapidly. What started as simple conversations turned into a passionate affair. Donna's husband was nearing 70 years old. Due to his age and health problems, their physical relationship had significantly diminished. In contrast, Damien was young, energetic, fit, and undeniably attractive. He dedicated a lot of time to the gym, often used steroids and various supplements to maintain his physique. It's unclear why Damien was attracted to a woman 2 decades his senior, but for Donna, he felt like a breath of fresh air, rekindling emotions she thought were long gone. She fully embraced this connection, quickly became emotionally invested. Even though the rehabilitation center had strict rules prohibiting romantic relationships among patients, the two secretly began dating. They found secluded spots to meet, such as storage rooms and restrooms. The thrill of being caught only seemed to strengthen their connection. Donna became so invested in the relationship that she couldn't envision her life without him. Their romance continued after they left the rehab facility. Damien was a caring partner who gave Donna plenty of attention, called her sweet names, and truly enjoyed making her feel valued. He may have developed genuine feelings for Donna, a sophisticated and self-assured woman who clearly looked after herself. At this point, Donna was not working anymore but had complete access to her husband's bank accounts and could spend as she pleased. Ghulam never scrutinized her spending or asked about her expenses. Taking advantage of this, Donna started showering Damien with lavish gifts, designer clothes, and accessories, while also covering all of his living expenses. She even rented a cozy apartment for them to meet privately. As a result, Damien became financially dependent on his wealthy partner, but neither of them appeared to have any concerns about it. When warned about his wife's affair, Ghulam had long suspected that something was off and noticed changes in Donna's behavior, but he had decided not to confront her about it. He realized that she was much younger and had emotional and physical needs that he could no longer fulfill. Gradually, he accepted that their passion had faded. Instead of reacting angrily, he calmly asked Donna if they should consider ending their relationship. Donna was shocked to learn that Ghulam knew about her affair. She explained that it was merely a temporary distraction that happened during a tough period in her life. She had met the younger man while in rehab, when she was feeling vulnerable and needed support. He seemed to understand her struggles better than anyone else. Despite this, she assured Ghulam that he was still the person she loved, promised to end her relationship with the younger man, emphasizing that he didn't truly matter to her. Ghulam felt moved by her words. He chose to trust her, forgave her, and decided they could move forward together as if nothing had happened. Damien had become Donna's overwhelming dependency, which she couldn't easily escape. She felt a strong attraction to him and, in his presence, experienced feelings of youth, desire, and genuine care. Her thoughts were focused on one main goal: eliminating the obstacle to her happiness, her husband. The affair continued at the apartment she had rented for Damien. Although they were more cautious now, Ghulam believed their relationship was over, while Donna planned to maintain it. When they couldn't meet in person, they stayed in constant contact, calling up to 20 times a day and exchanging hundreds of messages. Donna had no plans to let go of her boyfriend. Donna had selfish reasons for not wanting a divorce. She feared losing her financial stability. Before marrying Ghulam, they signed a prenuptial agreement that would limit her settlement to $250,000 if they separated. However, after Ghulam found out about her infidelity, he tried to keep the situation under control and offered to raise her settlement to $1 million. Donna turned down the offer, persuading Ghulam that she still loved him and wished to save their marriage. In reality, though, Ghulam's wealth had increased to nearly $12 million. Motivated by greed, Donna wanted everything, immediate access to wealth so she and Damien could live the way they wanted without restrictions. Every time they met, Donna portrayed Ghulam as a controlling tyrant who emotionally suffocated her and treated her like an object. She wanted Damien to see her husband as an enemy who deserved revenge for the emotional pain he supposedly caused her. Her manipulative stories worked well. A dark plan began to form in Donna's troubled mind, one she intended to execute with the help of her young lover. She believed that since Ghulam was much older and had several chronic health issues, his time was running out anyway. So, she thought, why not hasten the inevitable? To Donna, this seemed like the ideal solution. No one would disrupt her new life, and she would legally inherit all of Ghulam's assets, properties, and wealth as his surviving spouse. She shared her plan with Damien, offering him half of Ghulam's fortune in exchange for his help with a problem. Damien quickly agreed. The promise of a large payout clouded his judgment. Together, they began devising the crime. People who knew Ghulam were aware that he often carried a large amount of cash in his wallet. He frequently joked that anyone who tried to rob him would leave satisfied. Donna and Damien decided to exploit this, planning the crime to appear as a failed mugging that escalated into a tragic event. Developing the plan took nearly 2 months, as Donna and her accomplice carefully considered every detail to avoid mistakes. During this time, Donna portrayed the perfect devoted wife. She stayed close to her husband, accompanied him everywhere, and made sure no one suspected any issues in their marriage. Friends and neighbors genuinely thought they were a happy couple, and even Ghulam was convinced of it. Their initial attempt to execute the plan did not go well. Damien was meant to ambush Ghulam as he left the hospital and headed to his car in the parking lot. However, the area was crowded with people, prompting Damien to back out due to the fear of too many witnesses. It took them another month to devise a new strategy. This time, they aimed to attack on a deserted road where no one would be present to intervene. The plan was straightforward. Damien would follow their car at a safe distance, and Donna would stop at a designated location, pretending there was a medical emergency. They set the date for Friday, May 13, 2005. On that day, Dr. Ghulam planned to visit a neighboring state to look at a house he wanted to buy as a wedding gift for his nephew, Farak Munda. Donna offered to go with him, but her 72-year-old mother, Dorothy Smouse, who was visiting at the time, insisted on joining. Donna tried to talk her out of it, but Ghulam didn't see any issue with her coming along and agreed to let his mother-in-law participate. Damien, dressed entirely in black and wearing ski goggles to conceal his identity, waited in his car for a message from Donna indicating that their vehicle had left the house. Once he received the signal, he followed the predetermined route, maintaining a safe distance behind. After stopping to refuel, Donna took over driving to keep control over their timing. While traveling along a deserted highway, she pretended to feel ill and pulled over, claiming she needed to take some medication. At that moment, a black Volkswagen approached from behind. A man in ski goggles jumped out, ran to the passenger side where Ghulam was sitting, pointed a gun at him, and demanded his wallet. Ghulam complied without resistance, handed over his wallet. However, as soon as the attacker received the money, he shot Ghulam in the head and quickly returned to his vehicle, driving away rapidly. Ghulam died instantly from the gunshot. Donna then called emergency services, crying and screaming as she begged them to save her husband. She acted so convincingly like a distraught widow that, at first, no one suspected she could have been involved in the incident. Inconsistencies in the testimonies appeared quickly. Right from the initial interviews, it was evident that something was not right. Donna stated she didn't see the attacker or his vehicle, everything happened too quickly, and she was in shock. In contrast, her mother provided a different account. She claimed she saw both the shooter and the car clearly. According to her, the person who shot her son-in-law was a young black man driving a black Volkswagen. This assertion visibly upset Donna, who argued with her mother, insisting that she must have been mistaken. However, her mother remained firm and began to add more specific details. Donna contended that they had stopped the car because Ghulam requested it, while her mother claimed it was Donna who stopped the car, as illness. Investigators were also puzzled as to why the assailant only targeted one person while leaving two possible witnesses unharmed. 2 days after the incident, Dr. Ghulam's widow held a press conference where she answered reporters' questions with tears in her eyes. She made a heartfelt appeal to the public, urging anyone with information about the case to come forward and help with the investigation. Shortly after the press conference, the police received a phone call from a woman who claimed that Donna was actually the mastermind behind the incident and that she had been assisted by her lover, Damien Bradford. The caller also provided details such as the make and license plate number of Damien's car, as well as his home address. This caller considered herself to be Damien's fiancée. She had been closely monitoring the couple and shared all the information she had gathered. On the same day, police arrested Damien and searched his apartment. Although he had managed to get rid of the weapon, for some unknown reason, he kept the victim's wallet and brought it home. Inside the wallet, they found about $3,000 in cash, several bank cards belonging to Dr. Ghulam, and a photo of Donna. Authorities also discovered clothes with small blood stains that matched the doctor's. Damien was arrested and taken into custody. He mistakenly believed that his wealthy lover would help him and somehow secure his release. However, Donna, fearing for her own safety, chose to stay silent, hoping that all the blame would fall on Damien, especially since the evidence against him was overwhelming. When prosecutors told Damien that he might face the death penalty, he decided to cooperate with them in exchange for a shorter sentence. He disclosed the entire plan, provided text messages and documents, including evidence that Donna had purchased the car he was driving. In July 2007, Damien pleaded guilty to the crime and testified in court, explaining all the details of the scheme. Because he cooperated, he was sentenced to 17.5 years in prison. Donna was eventually sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on September 21, 2007, for the murder for hire conviction, with an additional 360 months to run concurrently on the remaining charges. Despite Donna's numerous appeals, the court upheld the original sentence. She is currently serving her sentence at the Tallahassee Federal Correctional Institution in Tallahassee, Florida. After being released on supervised release in 2020, Damien Bradford was arrested again on July 29, 2022, following an altercation with state police at the Franklin Mini Mart in Aliquippa. During his struggle with an officer, Bradford fired a shot at the officer, hitting him in the leg. Damien was convicted of attempted murder and aggravated assault on the officer, sentenced to 36.5 to 73 years in state prison in November 2023. In December of that year, the district court added a consecutive 10-year sentence for violating the terms of his supervised release. As of press time, Damien is serving his sentence at the Albion State Correctional Institution, located in Albion, Pennsylvania. The murder of Dr. Ghulam Munda on May 13, 2005, shattered the illusion of a perfect life in Hermitage, Pennsylvania, exposing a chilling tale of addiction and betrayal. Donna Munda, 23 years younger than her devoted husband, succumbed to a dependency on painkillers and an obsessive affair with Damien Bradford, leading her to orchestrate Ghulam's death for his $12 million estate. Ghulam's kindness and medical legacy endure in the community's memory, marked by tributes in 2025, while his tragic end serves as a stark warning of addiction's power to corrupt and destroy, urging greater vigilance to prevent such devastations. On a cold February afternoon in Wenatchee, Washington, 17-year-old Mackenzie Cowell stepped outside from her beauty school for a break, but she didn't inform anyone of her absence plan. She vanished without a trace. Hours later, her locked car was discovered in a secluded canyon away from town. There was only one set of footprints leading away into the snow. No one knew her whereabouts or what had occurred. What began as a missing person investigation quickly escalated into a more troubling situation. In the quiet town of Wenatchee, Washington, 17-year-old Mackenzie Cowell was recognized as a lively and dedicated young woman with a promising future. She managed her time between the homes of her divorced parents while preparing for high school graduation. In addition to her academic responsibilities, Mackenzie was also pursuing her dream of becoming a hairstylist by attending the Academy of Hair Design. Her life was busy, filled with early mornings, long days, and evenings spent dancing with her school's performance group, the Applettes, or participating in local modeling events. Mackenzie had faced challenges, including years of bullying because of her prominent underbite, which she hoped to correct with surgery. Nevertheless, she approached life with resilience. Her growing self-confidence was admired by both friends and family. Her father, Reed Cowell, often praised her relentless drive and determination. Her each day began before sunrise and extended well into the night. At that time, Mackenzie was in a close relationship with Joaquin Villazano, and they were nearly inseparable. Everything seemed to be going well until the events of February 9, 2010, changed everything. That evening, Mackenzie planned to have dinner with her father. It was meant to be a rare break in her busy schedule. When she didn't call after school, as she usually did, Reed quickly became worried. By 8 p.m., just as the family was about to report her missing, the police called first. They had found Mackenzie's car, a 2000 Pontiac Grand Prix, abandoned near Mission Ridge, about 40 miles from her home in Orondo. The surroundings were dark, isolated, and covered in snow. The car was locked. Cowell's wallet and some of her clothes were found in the car, although her debit card and mobile phone were missing. Only a pair of footprints were found at the scene, according to police, indicating that she had been alone when it was left there. The search for Mackenzie started right away. Bloodhounds, helicopters, and volunteers searched the steep and rugged area near where her car was discovered, but they found no clues. Although her case was classified as a missing person case with a risk of death, it did not initiate an Amber Alert. However, the local community and soon the entire nation became aware of her disappearance. Mackenzie's face was featured on news channels, and the FBI sent agents to assist local detectives. Everyone was eager for answers, but the situation was confusing. Mackenzie had never run away before. She was well-liked, responsible, and had strong ties to her family and community. At approximately 3 p.m. on February 9, 2010, she was last seen on surveillance video leaving the Hair Design Academy, walking to her car, and driving away. She told her classmates that she would be back in less than 15 minutes. Around this time, she sent a text message to her boyfriend saying, "Hey, what's up?" This was the last time she was known to have used her phone. After that, there was no further communication from her, making that text the last digital trace of her. Her debit card remained unused in the days that followed. Witnesses soon began to report their observations. Several residents near Mission Ridge stated they saw a tall, slim man with dark hair wearing a long coat walking alone around the time when Mackenzie's car was believed to have been abandoned, between 4:30 and 5:30 p.m. The police then focused on Mackenzie's phone records, examining thousands of messages, calls, and social media activities from platforms like Facebook and MySpace. However, despite the large amount of information, they could not find a clear lead. Detectives did not consider it a runaway case. For 3 days, her family, friends, and investigators remained hopeful, distributing flyers, searching the area where her abandoned car was found, and pursuing every potential lead. However, their hope turned to heartbreak. On the afternoon of February 13th, Mackenzie's body was discovered by a passerby on the banks of the Columbia River near Quincy, Washington, in a resort community about 32 kilometers from Wenatchee. She was found fully clothed, with her feet in the water. A vacant home for sale is located about 46 meters from where her body was found. The scene was eerie and unsettling. While authorities kept many details secret, what was revealed was alarming. Mackenzie had been beaten, stabbed, and strangled. There were no banned substance or alcohol in her system. Although she had not been abused, there was an attempt to dismember her after death. Her arm was partially cut off, and a serrated knife was found in her shoulder. Nearby, duct tape was discovered on the ground. Dive teams returned to search the riverbank, expanding their efforts to neighboring counties to gather clues. Detectives acknowledged they had no clear suspects. Mackenzie could have been targeted by someone she knew or by a stranger. Her death shocked the community. As news spread through schools and neighborhoods, about 1,800 people attended Cowell's memorial service, which was held at the Toyota Town Center in Wenatchee on February 25. The FBI increased its involvement in the case by forming a special task force. Investigators began their inquiry by interviewing people close to Mackenzie, including her boyfriend, Joaquin Villazano, and her mother's boyfriend, Joey Fisher. Although Joey appeared distressed and reportedly failed a lie detector test. It was noted that Joey had an argument with Mackenzie the day before her disappearance, but there was no evidence linking him to her death. Then, both Joaquin and Joey were later completely cleared by the police. As time passed, detectives pursued numerous leads. One notable tip came from Liz Reed, who is a college student, police informant, and former drug lord. Reed told the police that two banned substance lords, Sam Cuevas and Emmanuel Cerros, had killed Mackenzie in a case of mistaken identity. The two men reportedly believed that Mackenzie was a banned substance lord. Reed claimed that she had seen a snuff film about the murder, and Cuevas admitted to her that he choked Mackenzie to keep her quiet. Reed was able to describe the murder weapon before it was made public and provided the police with a ring that she claimed belonged to Mackenzie. She stated that Cerros had sent her to the murder scene to find the ring. None of the Cowell family members recognized the ring as belonging to Mackenzie. Reed later retracted her claim. As a result, the police began to doubt Reed's credibility. Cuevas and Cerros were questioned by the police and presented alibis, witness statements, and phone records showing that they were elsewhere on the day Mackenzie went missing. After encountering this setback, investigators continued their work. They pursued over 750 tips and conducted more than 800 interviews, collecting DNA samples from dozens of individuals. Despite their efforts, they were unable to identify the person responsible. For several months, Mackenzie's mother chose to stay silent out of respect for the ongoing investigation. However, as time passed without any leads, she felt compelled to go public, urging anyone with information, no matter how trivial it might seem, to come forward. The case took a new direction when a fresh informant stepped forward. After receiving some information, police began focusing their investigation on Christopher Scott Wilson. Christopher had previously attacked a woman at a party, choking her violently for no reason before acting as if nothing had occurred. At 29 years old, Christopher had attended the same hair design academy as Mackenzie and lived just a few blocks away from it. Those who knew him described Christopher as quiet and polite, but also strange. Simultaneously, police received a letter in August claiming that Christopher had an obsession with death, corpses, and serial killers. One of his schoolmates told police that Christopher had said he used to work at funeral homes and that he liked cutting people up, which raised concerns in light of the violent details surrounding Mackenzie's murder. One mentioned that he bragged about cutting people up while handling bodies, and another remembered him claiming he had strangled someone with a belt during a hotel encounter. Despite these alarming stories, those close to him defended him. His mother argued that being different did not make her son dangerous, while his best friend described him as kind and generous, suggesting he was simply misunderstood. Christopher stood out for more reasons than just his looks. He was at the academy on the same day Mackenzie vanished and left through the same back door just 2 minutes after her. After that, it became difficult to track his movements. He did send a few texts to his ex-girlfriend, but nobody could confirm his location that afternoon. He had no prior criminal record, and when the police questioned him, he claimed he didn't know Mackenzie at all. He even agreed to give a DNA sample, which turned out to be a major mistake. DNA from duct tape found near Mackenzie's body matched Christopher. When faced with the DNA match and questioned about his presence in the area, Christopher completely denied being there. Upon learning that his DNA was found at the crime scene, he asked for a lawyer, and the interview concluded. Investigators found it significant that Christopher was obsessed with Dexter, a fictional character known for dismembering his victims, which mirrored the injuries on Mackenzie's body. Along with the DNA evidence and the odd timing of when he left the academy, this provided enough reason to arrest him. After 8 months of uncertainty, police arrested Christopher Wilson. Although he had no connection to Mackenzie other than being classmates and had attended her memorial service to support friends, he was now in custody, charged with her murder. As detectives investigated his apartment and devices, the case took a more disturbing turn. A large discolored stain on the carpet was found to be Mackenzie's blood, contradicting Christopher's assertion that it was just spilled water. Authorities confirmed she had been killed in his home, but how she ended up there was still unclear. Mackenzie's father maintained that his daughter would never go anywhere with someone she didn't trust. Did she have more interactions with Christopher at school than anyone suspected? Was she manipulated or forced? No one could definitively answer these questions. On October 6th, Christopher was arrested on suspicion of second-degree murder and taken into custody on a $1 million bond. He pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. His court appearance attracted a very emotional crowd. His mother was in tears as he walked in, and many of his supporters firmly believed he was innocent. Among them were young women who had known Christopher personally and found it hard to accept that he could commit such a violent act. However, Mackenzie's friends and family felt that the doubts about Christopher's guilt were a painful reminder of the tragedy they faced. A close friend of Mackenzie emphasized to the public that Mackenzie was the real victim. She did not choose to be abducted, murdered, and thrown away by the Columbia River. She was a lively teenager with a bright future ahead of her. In December, the Cowell Task Force made a second arrest. Wilson's friend Tessa M. Schuleman was accused, but never charged, of helping Wilson cover up the crime. Instead, she was charged with obstruction of justice in an unrelated case. Detectives claimed that there were multiple photos found on Christopher's computer of Schuleman posing as a dead person at the spot in Christopher's apartment where Cowell's blood was found. Schuleman claimed that she did not know about the blood and that Christopher had told her to pose there. Investigators continued their work by submitting additional evidence to the lab and interviewing people connected to Christopher. However, they struggled to identify a motive for the crime. Some individuals involved in the case speculated that Mackenzie had been an easy target for someone mentally unstable. As the legal proceedings intensified, Christopher's defense team, led by prominent attorney John Henry Brown, previously associated with the notorious Ted Bundy, took aggressive measures to exclude critical evidence from the trial. Eventually, a judge decided that prosecutors could not present information about Wilson's work at local funeral homes or mention his Hannibal Lecter tattoo. The defense also introduced conspiracy theories, claiming that law enforcement had planted Mackenzie's blood in Wilson's apartment. They revisited a previous theory that implicated 2 men, Sam and Emmanuel, who had been accused by informant Liz Reed. Christopher's mother supported these theories, believing her son had been wrongfully accused. The defense pointed out that there was no DNA evidence connecting Christopher to Mackenzie's car or the knife found with her body. They also cast doubt on the authenticity of a ring that Liz claimed belonged to Mackenzie, noting the poor quality of the photos and that Mackenzie's family and friends did not recognize it. Nevertheless, the prosecutors grew more confident in their case. Christopher's charges were elevated to first-degree murder because they believed Mackenzie's death was planned. If found guilty, he could face up to 26 years in prison. In April 2011, a plea deal was offered to Christopher, a 6-year sentence for manslaughter. Initially, he declined the offer, insisting that he was innocent. Many were surprised by his decision since the evidence against him was strong and the plea deal seemed quite generous. As the trial date neared, Christopher changed his mind and wanted to accept the plea deal, citing jury survey results that indicated he might not get a fair trial. However, by then, the 6-year offer was no longer available. Mackenzie's family also asked Christopher to write a formal statement acknowledging his actions. In court, he read aloud, "He also recklessly caused the death of Mackenzie Cowell by strangulation and by stabbing her with a knife." When asked if this statement was true, he replied, "Yes." Despite this, he later claimed that his statement was false, stating he had only agreed to it to secure a plea deal. He continued to assert that he had been framed. Wilson ultimately pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter, first-degree robbery for stealing Mackenzie's phone, and assault in a different case. In May 2012, he was sentenced to 14 years and 3 months in prison but received credit for the time he had already served. After the hearing, in a heartfelt moment, the families of Mackenzie and Wilson embraced and exchanged apologies, showing a rare moment of compassion amidst the heartbreak of the case. Later, Christopher Scott Wilson tried to withdraw his guilty plea through the Washington Court of Appeals, but his appeal was unsuccessful. After serving 11.5 years, he was released from the Monroe Correctional Center on December 11, 2023 at the age of 43. Mackenzie Cowell, however, never lived past 17. In her short life, she left behind a legacy of determination, kindness, and ambition. Her bedroom remains nearly untouched, serving as a quiet tribute to the life she was creating. Her father, Reed Cowell, has placed a wind chime outside their home. When it jingles in the breeze, he feels as if he is hearing his daughter speak again. Mackenzie was his special gift from God, he says. Mackenzie will never leave his heart. On December 8, 2019, a man emerged from Koyan Junction railway station, carrying a large, heavy black bag. Koyan Junction is a major railway station on the central line of the Mumbai Suburban Railway Network, located at the junction of the northeastern and southeastern lines of the Mumbai Suburban Division of the Central Railway, 54 kilometers northeast of Mumbai. At 5:15 a.m., dawn was just breaking and the sun had not yet risen. Despite the early hour, Koyan Junction is always busy because it operates 24 hours a day with trains arriving and departing constantly. As a result, many auto rickshaws are typically waiting outside the station, especially during nighttime. In India, auto rickshaws are motorized versions of traditional manually pulled or cycle rickshaws. They are usually owned and operated by private individuals. A man with a heavy black bag approached an auto rickshaw driver outside the station and asked for a ride to Bhiwandi. The distance from Koyan Junction to Bhiwandi was only 3 miles and would take approximately 15 minutes. However, the rickshaw driver immediately noticed a terrible smell coming from the man's bag. The man said he had some rotten vegetables in his bag that he planned to throw into the river on the way. The smell was so strong that the rickshaw driver refused to take him to Bhiwandi. The man walked over to another nearby auto rickshaw driver to see if he would take him as a passenger. He left his heavy bag next to the fifth rickshaw driver because it was too difficult to carry. While waiting, rickshaw driver started to wonder why the man had put rotten vegetables in a brand new bag. If the vegetables were spoiled, wouldn't he usually just use a plastic bag? The rickshaw driver noticed that the bag emitted a smell similar to that of a butcher shop where meat is prepared. The man convinced an auto rickshaw driver to take him, but the driver only agreed to the ride for 180 Indian rupees, which is about $2, because of the foul odor coming from the bag. Normally, the fare from Kalyan railway station to Bhiwandi is just 80 rupees, or about $1. The first driver nearby overheard this and was surprised that he would pay more than double the usual fare. This made the driver suspicious, so he asked the man to open the bag. Upon hearing the rickshaw driver's words, the man became nervous and didn't respond. Instead, he instructed the second auto rickshaw driver to start driving. However, the second driver also found him suspicious and refused to take him. A tense situation developed outside the railway station. The first driver then called the police. When the man saw this, he panicked, left his bag behind, and bolted toward Kalyan railway station, disappearing from sight. Meanwhile, other auto rickshaw drivers outside the station called the police to report the abandoned bag and the foul odor coming from it. After the call, police quickly arrived at the railway station. The auto rickshaw driver reported that a man had approached him with a smelly bag, but when he had asked him to open it, he had run away. Alarmed, the police instructed everyone to back off. They then opened the black bag in front of the crowd. As soon as the bag was unzipped, everyone present, both auto rickshaw drivers and police officers, was struck with fear. It was likely the first time any of them had seen such a terrifying sight. Even some of the officers were witnessing something this gruesome for the first time in their careers. Inside the bag were the severed lower half of a human body, specifically, human legs. From the start, the police identified the dismembered body as belonging to a woman based on its physical characteristics. They promptly sent the body part to a nearby hospital for an autopsy and DNA testing. However, since the body was missing its head, it was very challenging to establish what the deceased woman might have looked like or what her facial features were. The pathologists quickly informed the police that the woman's body had been dismembered with a weapon that had sharp, serrated edges. They noted scratches on her thighs and observed that the area where her torso had been separated was cut in a rough, uneven way. This led them to believe that a handsaw was likely used in the dismemberment. The police discovered from the pathologist examining the body that the girl had been murdered 2 to 3 days prior. They estimated her age to be between 20 and 25 years. At the same time, the police struggled to identify the unclaimed body. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, the crime branch, also known as the Crime Investigation Department, joined the investigation. Afterward, the Kalyan police stepped up their investigation and decided to interview the auto rickshaw drivers who had first noticed the bag and alerted them. When the police spoke with first driver and his fellow drivers, they learned that the person who placed the black bag near the railway station was wearing a red shirt and khaki pants, and had a white cloth wrapped around his head. Since this unidentified individual had left Kalyan railway station, the police and the crime branch team quickly requested CCTV footage from all cameras at the station. The police then organized a large team to analyze all the camera footage, focusing on the time frame from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. on December 8th. After several hours of searching, some officers finally spotted the man in the red shirt on one of the station's cameras. To their surprise, he wasn't alone. Another man in a pink shirt was also seen holding the bag as they both exited the station together. However, the first driver and the other auto rickshaw drivers reported that only one person had approached them. When the officers shared the CCTV footage with the drivers, they recognized the man in the video as the one who had delivered the black bag to them. They also informed the police that when they called the police emergency number in front of that man, he became frightened and ran back inside the railway station. This led the police to review more CCTV footage. In another CCTV footage, a man wearing a red shirt was spotted running on a platform. He entered a restroom, took off his red shirt, and put on a different shirt. This change was probably made to avoid being recognized, although he kept his khaki-colored pants on. When he left the restroom, he walked casually, trying to appear nonchalant. By this point, he had likely boarded a train and escaped, which posed a new challenge for the police. They needed to identify this man and find out where he had come from. The officers speculated that he was likely local to Koyan City, as it would be unusual for someone to carry a heavy bag containing human legs over a distance of 100 to 150 miles just to dispose of it. After the suspect left Koyan railway station at around 5 a.m., the police collaborated with railway officials to determine how many trains had stopped there around that time and their origins. They discovered that 3 trains had arrived at the station within a 20-minute window, 10 minutes before and 10 minutes after 5 a.m. The police then traced these trains back to their previous stops. At that point, only half of the girl's body had been found. The police believed that if the murderer had placed her legs in a black bag, he might have dismembered the rest of her body and disposed of it in another black bag elsewhere. Consequently, they issued a public alert asking people to report any abandoned bags immediately. They also contacted their informants to check if any girls aged 20 to 25 had recently been reported missing in the nearby areas. The police continued their search for the man seen in CCTV footage from 3 different railway stations. Their efforts paid off when they spotted a man in a red shirt at Titvala railway station around 4 a.m., waiting for a train. He was carrying the same large, heavy black bag. He had received help from a man in a pink shirt at Koyan railway station. The 2 stations are about 9 miles apart, so it was clear that he couldn't have walked the entire distance with such a heavy bag. He must have used some form of public transportation. The police decided to question the auto rickshaw drivers waiting outside the station. They used screenshots from the CCTV footage to show each driver and asked if any of them had dropped a man off at the railway station with a large bag. While the man's face was unclear in the images, his clothing was distinctive. One of the auto rickshaw drivers outside Titvala railway station recognized the photo and approached the police, stating that he was the one who dropped the person off at the station in the early hours of December 8th. When the police inquired where he had picked up the man, the driver explained that there was a place in Titvala called Indira Nagar, where the man had been standing on one of the roads. He said that when the man saw his auto rickshaw, he had flagged him down and asked for a ride to the railway station. He mentioned that the man had a very large bag that he couldn't lift by himself, so he helped him load it into his rickshaw. After that, he stated that he had dropped the man off at Titvala railway station as he had requested. Upon receiving this information, the police quickly went to the spot where the driver had picked up the man. On their way to Indira Nagar, they got an important call from an informant. The informant shared that the man who left the black bag at Koyan railway station, the same person they had been tracking through CCTV footage, actually lived in a chawl in Indira Nagar. This news surprised the officers because the chawl was very close to where they were. Without delay, the police team changed direction and headed toward the chawl. During the investigation, they learned that in India, a chawl is a form of low-cost housing commonly located in densely populated areas with limited living space. The police found a girl around 13 or 14 years old who was in the 6th grade. They showed her a photo of a man in a red shirt and asked her if she recognized him, suggesting that he might live around there. Although the man's face was not very clear in the photo, the girl identified him by his clothing and hairstyle, stating that the uncle looked like Arvind uncle. The police then asked her where Arvind uncle lived. After obtaining his flat number, they went to his apartment but found the door locked from the outside. The officers felt disappointed, as they had not yet located the man despite their efforts. Rather than give up, they decided to interview Arvind's neighbors. During these conversations, the police also showed some of the neighbors the CCTV footage from the railway station. From this, they learned that the man's full name was Arvind Tiwari and that he worked as a manager at a transportation company called Pawan Hans Logistics. However, after speaking with the neighbors a little longer, the police discovered that Arvind Tiwari had a daughter who lived with him, but she hadn't been seen in the past 2 to 3 days. This raised concerns for the police. Not only was Arvind missing with his house locked, but his daughter had also not been seen for days. As the pieces of the puzzle started coming together, their suspicions about Arvind deepened, and they grew increasingly worried about his daughter. Because of this, the police went to the transportation company where Arvind worked to look for him. They found Arvind Tiwari there at the time. The first question the officers asked him upon seeing him was, "Where is his daughter?" The moment he heard this, a trace of tension appeared on his face, and the police immediately sensed that Arvind was hiding many secrets. Sensing this, the officers took Arvind to the police station for questioning, away from the rest of the company's employees. Even there, the police repeated their question about his daughter. However, at first, he continued lying, saying, his daughter has gone to the village to meet her mom and sisters. After hearing this, the police realized that Arvind himself would not tell the truth. Because of this, they showed him the CCTV footage in which he was captured. When the police asked him about the black bag, he broke down and then confessed his crime, admitting that he himself killed his daughter. The legs recovered from the bag belonged to his 22-year-old daughter, Princy Tiwari. After this, Arvind voluntarily recounted the entire story behind why he killed his daughter. Arvind Tiwari, 47 years old, was originally from Jaunpur, Uttar Pradesh, a city about 915 km away from Kalyan. Besides him, his wife and 4 daughters also lived in Jaunpur, with Princy being the eldest among them. In early 2016, Arvind moved from Jaunpur to Malad in search of work. During this time, in June 2019, his eldest daughter Princy completed her graduation and moved in with her father to pursue a better future. Princy decided that she wanted to get a job to financially support her father and the rest of the family. Within a few days of arriving, she began looking for a job at a local company. Soon, she found success and secured a small position at a private firm not far from home. However, about 2 to 3 months later, in October or November 2019, Princy informed her father that she was in love with a boy and wanted to marry him. However, Arvind Tiwari was an old-fashioned man, one could call him a conservative father. When he found out that the boy his daughter wanted to marry was from a different caste, he outright refused the marriage. On the other hand, Princy was adamant that she would only marry him. Arvind was unwilling to accept this marriage because he believed that if he married his daughter into another caste, people in society would say a lot of things against him. Besides, he still had to arrange the marriages of his 3 other daughters, and if Princy married outside their caste, it would create difficulties for 3 other daughters' marriages as well. With Princy insisting on marrying the same guy and her father Arvind equally adamant about stopping the marriage, arguments between father and daughter began to occur from time to time. On the evening of December 6, 2019, after both Arvind and Princy returned home from their respective work, another argument broke out. However, this time the argument escalated to the point where, in anger, Princy consumed rat poison, causing her to lose consciousness. At this point, it is unclear whether Princy consumed the rat poison herself or if Arvind, exerting control over her, deliberately made her drink it. In fact, the police believe that Arvind had mixed the poison into his daughter's food, and as soon as Princy ate it, she lost consciousness. Arvind Tiwari insisted to the police that Princy had taken the poison by herself. However, this raised an important question: if Arvind was honest, why didn't he take her to a hospital or doctor right away? The facts show that Princy was left unconscious in their home throughout the night, and instead of seeking help, Arvind chose to go to sleep. When he woke up on the morning of December 7th, he found that Princy had stopped breathing and had died from the poisoning. Seeing this, Arvind became extremely anxious and decided to dismantle his daughter's body to hide it in faraway places or rivers. He thought that if he did this, the police would never find Princy's body, and he wouldn't be caught. That morning, Arvind went to the market and bought 2 large bags and a handsaw. He returned home and, in his small room, cut his daughter's body into 3 parts. He removed her head from her torso and then separated the torso from the legs. He placed the legs in one bag, the torso along with both hands in another bag. This horrifying task took him all day. When night arrived, he took the bag containing his daughter's torso out of his room. He used public transportation and convinced an auto rickshaw driver to take him to his desired location by claiming he was carrying rotten vegetables. On the way, he discarded the bag into a river in Titvala. The next morning, December 8, Arvind left again, this time with a bag containing the lower half of his daughter's body. He first arrived at Titvala railway station and then took a train to Kalyan railway station. After getting off the train with the heavy bag, a passerby noticed Arvind struggling and offered to help. The man, wearing a pink shirt, assisted Arvind in lifting the bag and carried it outside the railway station before departing. Later, police confirmed that the passerby seen in the CCTV footage was not the murderer. He had simply helped Arvind with his luggage. The police tracked him down to his home, where he reiterated that he had no knowledge of the contents of the bag and only provided assistance. Following this, the police took Arvind with them as they searched for Princey's upper body and head. Arvind admitted that he had thrown the bag containing Princey's torso into the Ulhas River, leading the police to follow the river in hopes of finding it. On December 11th, they located the bag in the Ulhas River. Subsequently, the police turned their attention to finding Princey's head. Arvind guided them to the place where he had disposed of it. Despite searching for several days, they could not find the head. However, they did recover the handsaw used in the murder from the area Arvind had pointed out. While her head remained missing, forensic scientists were able to verify through DNA testing that the body was indeed that of Princey Tiwari. A father had brutally killed his own daughter simply because she had fallen in love with a boy from another caste and wanted to marry him. Now, Arvind Tiwari is in police custody. By committing this murder, he has not only ruined his own life but also the lives of his 4 daughters and his wife. In the end, this man will spend the rest of his life behind bars. The murder of Princey Tiwari by her father, Arvind Tiwari, in Titvala, India, revealed the devastating toll of caste-based prejudices. Arvind's refusal to accept Princey's inter-caste marriage led to her poisoning and the gruesome disposal of her remains in the Ulhas River. Arrested and charged under Section 302 of the Indian Penal Code, Arvind faces life imprisonment, likely with additional penalties for tampering with evidence. While justice awaits final sentencing, the tragedy has shattered Princey's family and sparked calls for reform, urging India to confront rigid traditions that fuel such irreversible losses. Anthony J. Dutcher was born on May 22, 1985, in Colorado Springs, USA. He was a dynamic individual with a wide range of interests. He managed to find time for many activities, including studying various musical instruments, languages, and martial arts. He also had a love for nature and enjoyed hiking. Anthony was capable of venturing into the forest alone for a few nights and surviving without assistance. He aspired to combine his passion for languages with his interest in martial arts, dreaming of a future as a translator, serving in the military, or pursuing a related career. Those who knew him described him as friendly, sociable, family-oriented, and ambitious. Anthony always made time for his loved ones, including his grandparents, Carl and Joanna, who lived in the small, close-knit community of Guffey, Colorado, which had a population of about 100 people. In Guffey, everyone knew each other, and the atmosphere was always peaceful and quiet. It was located an hour-and-a-half drive from Colorado Springs. Anthony loved visiting his grandparents because they lived in a peaceful, natural setting where he could explore the outdoors. Their tiny town had only a few dozen houses spread across the Great Plains. His grandfather, Carl Dutcher, was born in 1940. He served in the Army for 20 years before becoming a machinist, and for the last 13 years of his career, he worked in government positions, achieving significant success. His wife, Joanna, was born in 1942, had a diverse career as a cosmetologist, nurse, and store salesperson. Carl and Joanna had known each other since childhood, grew up together from the age of 7, fell in love, and married in 1964. Since then, they have been inseparable. They had 3 sons. After retiring, they moved to Guffey to enjoy their later years peacefully. There, they established a farm, started agricultural activities, and raised animals. Joanna was very sociable and active, while Carl preferred to stay at home and garden. He enjoyed working on their land. When Anthony visited, they purchased a small plot below the farm where Anthony built a hut. This hut was on a hill, offering a beautiful view of the surrounding area, including the family farm. Anthony and his grandfather constructed the hut several years ago. By the time Anthony turned 15, he began visiting more often, much to his grandparents' delight. They shared many interests, which helped them develop a close bond. On New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2000, Anthony was 15 years old. He was going to celebrate the holiday with his grandparents. Since his parents were going out, his grandparents happily agreed to take care of him. The Dutchers dropped Anthony off at his grandparents' house on the morning of December 31st, where preparations for the evening's festivities were already underway. Later, Anthony's friend Isaac Grimes, who was also 15, planned to join them. The boys had been best friends for a long time and were set to go on a holiday camping trip to Anthony's cabin. Shortly before midnight, Anthony's mother called him. They exchanged greetings, both feeling anxious that the phone lines might be busy when midnight struck. They chatted for a while and agreed to reach out to each other on the morning of January 1st, after everyone had woken up. Anthony promised to call as soon as he got up, as he usually wakes up early. However, when his mother woke up in the morning, she did not receive the promised call or even a message, which she found odd. Anthony usually sent a congratulatory message that would arrive at night in case the lines were overloaded, but that didn't arrive either. At first, she didn't worry, thinking it was a night of celebration and rest. She also knew that the boys had planned to go to a remote hut where the connection might be weak. However, when neither the grandparents called nor responded, her concern began to grow. She decided to reach out to her relatives to understand what was happening, but none of them picked up her calls. Anthony's mother, Jennifer, tried multiple times to contact at least one family member, but no one answered until January 3, 2001. At that point, she could no longer dismiss her worries with excuses about camping or the holiday, so she called the police to request a welfare check on her relatives. Law enforcement responded quickly. When they arrived, they discovered a chaotic scene. An exterior examination showed signs of forced entry. Someone had broken into the house through the back door. Inside, everything was in disarray, and many items were damaged. When the patrol arrived at the kitchen, they discovered Carl Dutcher unresponsive on the floor, surrounded by a pool of blood. He had been shot twice in the chest. Concerned that the shooter might still be nearby, the officers drew their service weapons. There was no gun found beside the body, indicating that a crime had likely taken place. As they entered the hallway, they discovered a woman's body on the floor next to a broken toilet in the bathroom. It was Joanna. She was lifeless, lying in a large pool of blood. She had been shot 6 times, making it clear that her death was a murder, not an accident. The family was particularly concerned because Anthony was missing from the house. The police cordoned off the farm and initiated an investigation, focusing on locating Anthony first, as he might need help. Jennifer confirmed that he should have been with his grandparents at that time and couldn't have left for home alone without informing anyone. Anthony was declared missing, and a search was launched. The Dutcher family was devastated by the events and chose to travel to Guffey to help search for Anthony. Jennifer informed the police that her son planned to spend the night at a cabin in the forest, but she couldn't explain its exact location over the phone. The forensic still experts continued to investigate the site of the attack. It appeared to be a sudden and unprovoked assault. Carl seemed to have walked into the kitchen and was shot without any warning. He didn't have time to defend himself and showed no signs of struggle. Joanna, on the other hand, might have had slightly more time to react. The assailants attacked her, forcefully hitting her head against the edge of the toilet before shooting her. She likely tried to protect herself, as one of her hands was shot through. The bullet struck her head after entering through her palm, leading to her immediate death. She was presumably the second victim of the attackers and may have attempted to escape to the bathroom for safety, but it was futile. Members of the Dutcher family who arrived in Guffey, they reported that Carl had a strong interest in firearms. He owned a variety of guns, including different models of pistols and rifles, which he restored and sold as a hobby. At the time of the crime, there were several dozen firearms in his house. It was crucial to determine what might have been stolen. The son of Carl, Charles, assisted in this investigation, he sharing his father's passion for guns and having a rough idea of what was in their collection. This was an important lead, as the firearms were not stored openly but rather in a locked gun cabinet. For someone to find, open, and steal a gun, they would need to act with intention, suggesting that the criminal was familiar with both the victims and the location of the gun cabinet. Detectives started to entertain the theory that Anthony, the missing grandson, might be the killer. They were unsure about his fate. It was theorized that he could have taken a weapon and harmed his family before fleeing. However, Anthony's parents firmly rejected this idea. They emphasized that he loved his grandparents deeply and had great relationships with all his relatives. Furthermore, he did not have any mental health issues and had never run away. Overall, there were no known problems with him. Anthony's parents guided the police to the campsite in the woods where Anthony intended to spend the holiday with his best friend Isaac Grimes, in a cabin. Jennifer was hopeful of finding her son alive, believing he might be hiding there to escape any danger. The campsite was located about 500 meters from their home, situated on a hill obscured by thick vegetation. Several armed police officers, along with her, made their way to the site. When the police entered the scene, they quickly spotted a sleeping bag with someone inside and another empty bag nearby. There were also board games scattered around, suggesting they had started playing. Unfortunately, Jennifer's hopes were shattered. Anthony was present, but tragically, he had been murdered. His throat was deeply slit, nearly decapitating him. The attack was brutal, leaving him without a chance to defend himself. It appeared he was caught off guard and killed in cold blood, and the single, powerful blow indicated that the killer was experienced. Detectives found this particularly troubling. The precision and force suggested it was not the killer's first murder. Despite their efforts, the police could not locate the weapon used in the stabbing. The parents were thoroughly interviewed, sharing everything they knew about Anthony's belongings. It seemed the attacker had taken some valuables, which could assist in the investigation. Notably missing was a watch given to Anthony by his grandparents for the holiday. It was a significant, adorned with a blue flame design. On that day, another 15-year-old boy, named Isaac Grimes, had been at the campsite. This accounted for an extra sleeping bag and game set up in Anthony's cabin. It was clear that at least 2 people were present, but the other sleeping bag was empty. The police were now looking for another potential victim. They first decided to visit Isaac's home since he lived nearby. To their surprise, they found him there. 15-year-old Isaac Grimes opened the door calmly. He was alive and seemed unharmed. Isaac explained to investigators that he had initially planned to go to his relatives with Anthony on New Year's Eve to set up a tent camp. However, at the last minute, he decided to cancel his plans with Anthony because other friends invited him to a party in Colorado Springs. The party was organized by high school students, and Isaac chose to attend. He stated that he never reached the Dutcher's house, had not seen his best friend, and was unaware of what happened to him. Isaac was deeply saddened by the news of Anthony and his grandparents' deaths, but there was something troubling about how he was acting. Unfortunately, Anthony's mother wasn't certain if Isaac had visited Anthony that evening. They hadn't talked about it during her conversation with her son, but she did know that Isaac had been to the cabin with Anthony earlier. Anthony had taken him to his secret spot, which was meant to be kept private from everyone else. The detectives decided to confirm Isaac's statement by finding out who he attended the party with that night. Reluctantly, he provided the names of 2 classmates, Jonathan Matheny, who is 17, and Glenn Urban, who is 18. The police reached out to both boys, and while they were willing to talk, their accounts were surprisingly similar. It seemed as if they had rehearsed their stories, using the same phrases and wording, which is unusual during interrogations. However, this similarity alone was not sufficient to charge them. The police needed evidence linking them to the crime scene. Regardless, Jonathan and Glenn, along with Anthony's best friend, Isaac, remained under suspicion. It was unclear whose sleeping bag was found next to Anthony's body in his cabin. Following this, the autopsy report was released, showing that all the victims, Carl, Joanna, and Anthony, had died on New Year's Eve. This strongly suggested that the killer had targeted the family specifically, as he knew where to find each of them. The attacker must have been familiar with the Dutcher family, since very few people knew about Anthony's secret cabin or Grandpa's gun cabinet. This theory was further supported by the fact that Carl's house had weapons. He had a habit of always carrying a gun with him before opening the door and typically kept it near the entrance. For an American living in a remote area, having a gun can be crucial for self-defense. This practice was so common that the grandfather would even greet his children and grandchildren while holding a gun. However, Carl unprepared when the attack occurred. The assailant or assailants were careful and left no evidence in the house. It was believed that Anthony was the first victim and was likely killed by a single attacker. The house assault might have been carried out by another individual, as suggested by the different behavior, style, and weapon used in the attack. Nonetheless, these theories could not be confirmed. The investigation lasted for 2 months. No useful evidence had been discovered. Then, on March 6, 2001, Isaac came to the police station, terrified for his life. He shared a bizarre story about being chased by a man with a shotgun who had killed his best friend's family. Initially, this seemed like paranoia, possibly the result of the boy being deeply affected by the recent murders of 3 people. However, given this new information, the detectives began to suspect something more and decided to re-examine the events from New Year's Eve. One of the investigators recalled the watch mentioned by Anthonia's parents. When they met with Isaac, they asked him about it. He claimed he had seen the watch on his friend, which was the biggest contradiction in the investigation. The watch had only been given on New Year's Eve, so Isaac couldn't have seen it unless their meeting occurred just before midnight. This conflicted with Isaac's earlier statements. It became evident that Isaac had been in the house and knew more than he let on. It appeared that the investigation was making progress. On March 8, 2001, Isaac Grimes and his parents were called in for an official questioning. He maintained that he had not been at his friend's house on the night of the incident. The police then shifted their focus to the watch, effectively exposing Isaac's lies in front of his family. This investigation led to the discovery of an army jacket with blood stains in the victim's house. Eventually, Isaac succumbed to the pressure of his conflicting statements and confessed. Isaac shared the truth about what occurred on New Year's Eve. He explained that just before midnight, his classmate Jonathan Matheny brought he over to Anthony's house. The boys greeted each other, exchanged holiday wishes, and then went to a campsite together. There, they spent time as friends, played games, and shared stories. Anthony was unaware that his best friend had hidden a knife. As they were about to go to bed, Isaac distracted Anthony by pointing out a light in the window. When Anthony looked away, Isaac approached him from behind, drew a knife, and stabbed Anthony in the throat with great force, resulting in a fatal injury. The medical examiner was later shocked to discover that a 15-year-old boy could inflict such a deep wound with a single strike. Isaac acknowledged that he had applied all his strength in the attack. Jonathan Matheny arrived at the Dutcher farm around 4 a.m. with a rifle. He waited at a distance for Isaac to return, and then they both entered the house to confront the elderly couple, breaking down the back door. The noise disturbed the homeowners. Joanna and Carl got up, and Carl went to the kitchen to see what had happened, likely intending to scare off the intruders, unaware they were there to kill them. Jonathan shot Carl first while Isaac just watched. Carl fell to the ground after a couple of shots. Terrified, Joanna fled to the bathroom and locked the door, hoping to hide, but Jonathan had no intention of leaving any witnesses. He forced open the bathroom door, struck Joanna's head against the toilet, and then shot her. It's important to note that both perpetrators were still in school. Jonathan was 17 and Isaac was only 15. Isaac later stated that he simply followed his older friend and watched as he committed these crimes. The criminals knew about the weapons Carl owned and took several with them. They loaded the weapons into a car trunk and drove to the house of Glenn Urban, 18-year-old. They gave him a knife and a rifle that had been used to attack two people, instructing him to get rid of the weapons, making him an accomplice. The police could not determine the motive behind the crime, and Isaac refused to speak. The source of the rifle was also unknown. 17-year-old Jonathan Matheny was arrested right after he confessed, but he claimed he was not involved in the triple murder. Then Glenn Urban was taken into custody. He initially denied any involvement but eventually confessed. Glenn revealed that he had been instructed to dispose of the weapons and provided important information. He alleged that another teenager, Simon Sue, who was 18 at the time, played a key role in the crime. Glenn stated that Simon was the one who planned the massacre, chose the targets, directed the operation, and devised a way to cover up the evidence. At Simon's urging, Glenn was instructed to destroy the weapon. He took it apart and disposed of the pieces in various locations. During the investigation, the detectives learned about Simon for the first time and decided to question the other two people involved in the crime. However, those still individuals refused to speak. It was revealed that Simon had a lonely and unloved childhood, with very little social interaction during his school years. He met Isaac, Glenn, and Jonathan while in high school. Isaac and Simon became friends through their shared interests in chess and video games. All three of them were socially awkward and had few friends, wishing desperately to be more popular. Over time, Simon gained influence over the group, promising them a more exciting life. He claimed to be part of a secret organization and said he had connections with a rebel army in Guyana. This behavior was similar to recruitment methods used to attract socially isolated schoolchildren who want to belong to something bigger. It soon became clear that Simon had deceived them all. When they became part of this organization, they underwent intense training that included using firearms and throat-cutting techniques. Simon assigned progressively tougher and more brutal tasks. It got to the point where he compelled them to eat and drink to the point of exhaustion, referring to this torment as a test of their willpower. In the end, he manipulated the teenagers so thoroughly that they couldn't picture their lives outside of this organization in completing Simon's demands. Simon ran the club like a military unit, assigning each member a military rank to inspire them to serve him better. He forced the boys to give him a portion of their money and punished them harshly for disobedience. One of the ongoing activities was watching disturbing videos of real animal and human killings. When Isaac voiced his concerns and showed signs that he felt something was wrong, Simon labeled him a traitor. He threatened Isaac with violence and demanded that he prove his loyalty to the group, all while being pressured by two older boys. Isaac was given the task of killing his best friend, Anthony, to prove his loyalty to the team. Jonathan was tasked with getting rid of Anthony's grandparents. Both were supposed to retrieve several weapons from Carl's house. Since they lived nearby, they were aware of his interest in weapon restoration and knew about his gun cabinet. It was not difficult to find out the location thanks to Anthony. But why was the Dutcher family chosen as the victims? The motive for the triple murder of these individuals remained a mystery. According to sources, Carl may have made some unpleasant remark about Simon, which could have provoked hatred. However, there was no confirmation of this. All the students claimed that Simon set them against Carl because the real motive might have been the presence of firearms, which Simon wanted to acquire. When the police raided Simon Sue's house with a warrant, they quickly found evidence that corroborated what the other teenagers had said. Specifically, they discovered several items stolen from Carl. It appeared that real preparations for another crime were underway. The manipulator was found to have several dozen firearms, all of which had been stolen during various assaults. However, prior to the tragedy at Carl Farm, these assaults had not been violent. There were at least 30 pistols and rifles in the house, which now needed to be examined. Despite being 18 years old, the leader of the gang had his own warehouse, containing even more weapons, spare parts in various stages of disassembly, and ammunition. There was a whole arsenal stored there, including an AK-47. According to the police, it could arm a small infantry unit. Simon was taken in for questioning. Despite being a quiet and unloved young man, he turned out to be very cunning and cynical. He refused to admit guilt, claiming that Glenn, Isaac, and Jonathan were the real criminals who wanted to make him the scapegoat. According to Simon, He was in Canada at the time of the attack and had nothing to do with what happened. Of course, the leader of the gang lied. He denied forcing his friends to engage in various extreme activities and described the club they allegedly belonged to as merely an entertainment community. He immediately began to proclaim that all three accomplices had mental and behavioral issues, labeling all of them as aggressive. It was clear he had prepared extensively in case he was caught. Ultimately, it was decided to try all the criminals as adults for the triple murder. Isaac Grimes pleaded guilty to the murder of Anthony Dutcher, his best friend. He was sentenced to 60 years in prison. Jonathan Matheny and Simon Sue were charged with organizing criminal activity, planning murder, and the legal possession of weapons. Jonathan Matheny was also charged with double murder. In the end, Jonathan sentenced to 68 years in prison, while the ringleader, Simon Sue, was sentenced to 53 years in prison. For aiding the criminal group and disposing of the instrument of the crime, Glenn Urban was sentenced to only 2 years in prison. It was proven that he did not plan or commit the crime, though he was fully aware of his friend's plans and did not help prevent the atrocities. Isaac's mother still cannot believe that her son committed such a horrific crime. She struggles to understand how her sweet, kind son, Isaac, turned into a real monster under the influence of a dangerous manipulator. Isaac himself explains his participation in the murder by stating that he was intimidated and threatened. He was warned that if he did not obey and fulfill his role, his family would be killed, which left him feeling forced to stab his best friend. After beginning his sentence, Isaac wrote a letter in which he expressed remorse for the crime he had committed. Some of Anthony's relatives do not believe Isaac's story about intimidation and think that he could have gone to the police, which could have prevented anyone from being harmed, neither his family nor the Dutcher family. Dutcher family feel that the sentences given are too light. They believe Simon and Jonathan should receive the death penalty for the brutal killings of innocent people. Anthony's mother expressed forgiveness towards Isaac and even testified on his behalf during the trial to help lessen his sentence. She thinks that Isaac was manipulated by Simon. After her son's death, she was so heartbroken that she attempted to end her life twice. Despite this, she continues to write letters to Isaac and feels compassion for him. The tragic end of the Dutcher family story is a heartbreaking reminder of human complexity and the consequences of psychological manipulation. The case not only claimed the lives of Anthony, Carl, and Joanna, but it also left deep wounds in the hearts of the family and the community. Although justice was served through the convictions of Isaac, Jonathan, Simon, and Glenn, the Dutcher family's loss remains irreparable. Jennifer's act of forgiveness toward Isaac reflects love and compassion while also raising questions about personal responsibility and the effects of manipulation. Now more than ever, this story draws attention to the need to protect young people from negative influences and reminds us of the value of family and community engagement in preventing similar tragedies. That night, Keith Green went out to attend an important meeting, not knowing it would be the last time he would be seen. The next morning, his phone was found abandoned in Golden Gate Park. No trace, no message. As police followed each lead, they all pointed to a cold, premeditated murder. But when the trial ended, the nation was shocked. The accused walked free. It was a story that made everyone ask, is justice ever fair? Or is it only for the rich? At approximately 9:00 p.m. on April 28, 2016, Keith Green and Tiffany Lee met at Millbrae Pancake House, a small restaurant about a 30-minute drive from their former home in Hillsborough. They planned to discuss the custody of their 2 daughters. However, the conversation shifted, and Keith requested $4,000 per month in alimony from Tiffany, along with one of their BMW cars. He claimed these requests were to ensure their daughter's comfort when staying with him, preventing them from experiencing a significant decrease in their standard of living. The discussion lasted approximately 1 hour. Tiffany left the restaurant before Keith. The following morning, the 29th of April, around 10:00 a.m., a passerby discovered an unattended cell phone in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park. The phone was identified as belonging to Keith Green. This discovery was puzzling because the park was a considerable distance from Hillsborough, and Keith had no apparent reason to be there. Friends and family attempted to contact Keith by phone, but he did not answer. Tiffany also stated that she had not heard from him since they left the restaurant. By that evening, missing person flyers featuring Keith's picture were being distributed throughout the city. At the time of his disappearance, Keith was wearing black sweatpants and a white jacket with green sleeves. He had tattoos of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X on his legs. The search moved quickly. The case took on greater urgency when it became clear that Keith hadn't returned to the friend's home where he'd been staying temporarily, nor to any relatives. None of his bank accounts had been touched, and his phone was switched off. From the moment he walked out of the diner, it was as if Keith had simply vanished. Keith Andrew Green was born on July 19, 1989, and raised in San Mateo, California. He was from a working-class family. After his parents' divorce, he lived with his mother, Colleen Cudd, although they didn't have much money. Keith was energetic and sociable. In high school, he was a talented athlete, particularly in football. As the star quarterback at Aragon High School, he led his team to an undefeated season and a playoff win in 2005. His athletic skills earned him a partial scholarship to Eastern Washington University, where he continued to play football. However, he had difficulty keeping up with his coursework and the rigorous training demands of college sports. Ultimately, he withdrew from the university before graduating. After returning to California, Keith had some run-ins with the law. As a minor, he got involved in a scheme involving the fraudulent use of Macy's gift cards. While he didn't face severe legal penalties, the incident hurt his reputation and future prospects. In early 2009, Keith met Tiffany, a young woman from a rich Chinese family in Hillsborough, California. Although they had different backgrounds and lifestyles, they started dating. Within a year, they moved into a lavish house in a very exclusive neighborhood, worth about $7 million. Tiffany's mother had given her the house as a gift. This was a huge change for Keith, who went from living simply to enjoying luxury every day: expensive cars, household help, a nanny, and a personal driver. Keith and Tiffany have 2 daughters. From the outside, they seem like the ideal family. However, Keith wasn't steadily employed and depended on Tiffany's family for money. He said he wanted to focus on self-improvement. With Tiffany's support, he enrolled at Le Cordon Bleu in Pasadena, a well-known and costly culinary school. He was scheduled to finish his studies in September 2016 and intended to start a restaurant career. Tiffany paid for his tuition, which was approximately $40,000 per year. Despite their apparent success, problems were developing. Keith felt insecure because he relied on the Lee family for money, and this caused friction. People close to Tiffany said she started seeing Keith less as a father to her children and more as someone just spending her money. In early 2015, Keith and Tiffany's relationship began to fall apart. Keith was drinking and using marijuana. He still couldn't find a steady job. His culinary school training didn't make up for his financial and emotional reliance on Tiffany. They argued more and more often. They officially separated in October 2015. Keith moved in with a friend, but wanted to stay involved in his daughters' lives. He also tried to maintain their previous lifestyle, possibly for both their benefit and his own. However, Tiffany controlled most of the money and decisions, which made Keith feel increasingly disconnected and saddened. To better understand the story, let's learn about Tiffany's life. She was born in Beijing, China. Tiffany grew up in a wealthy family whose primary business was real estate. They owned residential and commercial properties in major Chinese cities, including a skyscraper in Beijing. Over time, the family expanded their investments to the US, the Caribbean, and other international markets. Besides real estate, they also invested in logistics, high-tech companies, and global trade. Their interests included shipping and electronic supply chains. This diverse investment strategy helped them to steadily increase their wealth. Tiffany's early years were split between two countries. She spent much of her childhood in China, attending elite private schools that emphasize strict discipline, high academic expectations, and a strong sense of hierarchy. She studied piano, practiced ballet, and participated in competitions. Concurrently, her parents introduced her to business matters from an early age, gradually involving her in family investment discussions. In 1992, Tiffany's family settled permanently in California's Silicon Valley. Then, she became a U.S. citizen in 2000. She graduated from a private high school and later earned a master's degree in business from the University of San Francisco. Despite fully integrating into American life, her family maintained close cultural and financial ties to China. In the early 2010s, Tiffany managed her family's real estate in California. She was responsible for several properties, including their Hillsborough mansion, which they had bought before moving to the city. Hillsborough View was chosen for its safety, reputation, privacy, and wealthy residents who didn't need to show off. Tiffany's social background, education, and perfect English allowed her to easily fit in with the local upper class. She went to charity events, joined parent groups at private schools, networked with business owners and lawyers. People saw her as a confident and independent woman from a prominent family. Her behavior reflected her dual background. She was reserved, strategic, but also friendly in public, and very disciplined in business. Tiffany was an only child, so she felt immense pressure from her parents. They expected her to inherit the family business, expand it internationally, and secure its future. Tiffany shaped her life around these expectations. She stayed out of trouble, avoided attention, and showed no desire to break free from her family's wealth. Instead, she worked hard to be seen as someone dedicated to protecting and increasing their fortune. Having a dual cultural identity was both beneficial and challenging for her. She was able to leverage the advantages of both Chinese discipline and American adaptability. However, the strong expectations of her family sometimes conflicted with her own desires. This created tension in her romantic relationships, particularly when her partners didn't meet her family's approval. Tiffany started a relationship with Kaveh Bayat. Tiffany said this happened after she and Keith had broken up for good. However, others said she was seeing Kaveh Bayat while she was still with Keith. When Keith learned about Kaveh Bayat, it made his conflict with Tiffany much worse. Kaveh Bayat then moved into the house where Keith used to live with his daughters, which Keith felt was a deliberate provocation. Their relationship became even more hostile, with Tiffany and Keith constantly arguing and accusing each other of manipulating the situation. There were also rumors that Keith threatened to reveal damaging information about Tiffany, possibly about her new relationship or business dealings, unless his demands were met. These threats made it impossible for Tiffany and Keith to cooperate in any way. Keith was in a difficult position. He lacked a stable job and home, and struggled to see his daughters regularly. Many people doubted his sincerity. He openly expressed his frustration and desperation, but he remained determined to be part of his daughters' lives. Even as his situation worsened, he stayed in California to be near his children, refusing to move in with family elsewhere. By the end of April 2016, despite appearing to communicate, Keith and Tiffany no longer trusted each other. They saw each other as opponents with conflicting goals. From the very start of the investigation into Keith Green's disappearance, Tiffany Lee was considered a possible person of interest. However, concrete leads only emerged after the interrogation of Olivier Adela, a close associate of Tiffany, and her new partner, Kaveh Bayat. Olivier, a former MMA fighter and owner of a transportation company, had initially been hired as a personal trainer and later as a bodyguard. He would become a key figure in revealing the events leading to the crime. During questioning, Olivier confessed in detail to the crime. He admitted he wasn't there when it happened, but knew who did it and how. He said that on the 28th of April, 2016, he followed Tiffany and Keith after they left the Millbury restaurant. Tiffany was driving, with Keith as a passenger, GPS data confirms Olivier's statement that he followed them that night, contrary to Tiffany's original story, that she dropped Keith off somewhere along the way. Olivier stated that she took Keith all the way to her house in Hillsborough. Investigators believe the crime occurred at Tiffany's home. Olivier claims he was driving behind them but didn't participate in the crime. Though he knew it was going to happen, Cave Bayet claims he shot Keith in the head with a 9mm handgun in the garage of their home. Blood evidence in the garage and one of the family's cars confirmed Keith was there. After the shooting, the body was put in a vehicle. The following day, Tiffany and Cave asked Olivier to get rid of the body. Olivier agreed because he felt he was already too involved and saw it as repayment for the money, gifts, and loyalty they had given him. He drove the body to a secluded, wooded area in Sonoma County. 2 weeks later, the body was found. Forensic experts determined Keith died somewhere else. The most important part of Olivier's statement was his claim that the crime was planned months beforehand. He stated that Tiffany and Cave had asked him to kill Keith as early as February 2016. When Olivier came to see them, they took his phone and searched him to make sure he wasn't recording them. As a precaution, Olivier said he refused to kill Keith himself but agreed to pressure him, saying he didn't want to go too far. However, he continued to communicate with Tiffany and Cave, assist them in other ways. Later, when they asked him to get rid of the body, he agreed because he felt he couldn't refuse. Investigators confirmed his involvement. Blood matching Keith's DNA was found in the trunk of Olivier's car. Surveillance footage also showed all three moving in sequence, first toward Tiffany's home, then to the remote location where the body was later found. The evidence of premeditation became the backbone of the prosecution's case. The search uncovered messages between Tiffany and Cave indicating they had been working together. The murder weapon itself was never recovered. However, the wound characteristics and trajectory led experts to conclude that a 9mm handgun had been used. Additional, though not conclusive, evidence came from gunpowder residue found in the garage where, according to Olivier, the shot was fired. Olivier's confession formed the basis for arresting all three suspects. His detailed knowledge of the transport of the body and facts only a participant could know proved his active role rather than mere presence at the scene. Olivier's testimony was obtained as part of a preliminary agreement with the district attorney's office. He agreed to cooperate in hopes of reducing his own sentence, an arrangement that would later play a pivotal role in the case. Early in the investigation, authorities believed they had enough proof to determine that Keith Green's death was not accidental or the result of a spontaneous fight. The investigators determined the crime was planned in advance. With each of the three suspects assigned a specific role, Tiffany was initially questioned on May 4th. When asked about the GPS data showing her traveling the same route as Keith on the night of his death, she denied knowing why and maintained that they had separated after dinner. However, investigators already had a different understanding of what happened, and her responses only increased their suspicion that she was hiding something. Around the same time, Cave was also questioned. He denied any involvement, claiming that he was at home on the night Keith went missing. However, his cell phone data placed him in the same area where Tiffany and Keith's movements were recorded, and later near Olivier's residence. He had also been exchanging messages with Tiffany throughout the evening of the 28th of April. This contradicted his version of events and heightened investigators' doubts. On May 26, 2016, Tiffany Lee, Cave Bayet, and Olivier Adela were all arrested. They were charged based on false statements, inconsistencies in their stories, cell phone data, biological evidence, surveillance video, and suspicious messages. However, key pieces of evidence were still missing, such as the murder weapon, a recording of the crime, or a confession from the actual shooter. Despite being charged together, each suspect's legal case progressed separately. Tiffany was the first person granted bail in the case. Prosecutors worried she might leave the country and requested a very high bail amount. Because Tiffany had dual citizenship in the US and China, substantial financial assets, and property in other countries, the court set her bail at an unusually high $35 million. This was one of the largest bail amounts ever in San Mateo County. California law allows a defendant to be released by paying 10% of the bail in cash, with property covering the rest within 2 weeks. Lee's family raised the money by using California real estate as collateral and paying some of the amount in cash. Tiffany was released on June 8, 2016, and was monitored electronically and not allowed to leave the country. The public responded quickly and strongly. Newspapers and social media buzzed with discussions about whether the situation was fair. A wealthy woman, accused of planning a crime in advance, was allowed to go home. Meanwhile, the other 2 defendants stayed in jail. Activists, the victim's family, and people fighting for equal rights claimed this case showed how much better options rich people have compared to everyone else. Articles started to ask if the justice system could ever be truly fair, if being rich could buy your freedom. As the trial approached, the prosecution faced a significant hurdle. They had no direct physical proof linking Tiffany to the crime. Instead, their case relied on circumstantial evidence, including messages, witness statements, traces of blood, but no murder weapon, crime scene video, or Tiffany's fingerprints at the location. Their main task was to present this indirect evidence in a compelling way. The defense attorneys presented a different argument. Tiffany's lawyers claimed the case was based on guesses, not proven facts. They highlighted that Tiffany's DNA wasn't found in the garage where the crime supposedly happened, and there were no fingerprints or a murder weapon linking her to it. They stated that there was no clear evidence connecting her to the crime. They also expressed worry about prejudice, implying that people suspected her because of her ethnicity and wealth. Cave's defense relied on similar arguments: insufficient evidence, no direct link between him and Keith's body, and no trace of his biological material at the suspected crime scene. His lawyers emphasized that simply exchanging text messages with Tiffany could not be equated with carrying out the crime. For Olivier, the strategy was different. His decision to cooperate as a witness strengthened the prosecution's case, but also created a vulnerability. His testimony could be seen as the result of pressure or an attempt to avoid prison time. From the very beginning, even during the initial hearings, it was obvious that the trial would be a major event. The case involved sensitive topics like violent death, family arguments, money, immigration, legal strategies, and unfair social differences, which were sure to attract a lot of public interest. Both the prosecution and defense used all available legal, financial, and media resources to try to win. Under the court's guidance, Tiffany stayed out of the public eye and only communicated through her lawyer's official announcements. Cave and Olivier remained in jail awaiting trial. Although their cases were initially separate, they were combined into one trial. This allowed the prosecutors to present a single, coherent explanation of the crime. The main trial in the Keith Green case began that September in San Mateo County Superior Court. Tiffany and Cave were the defendants, with Olivier's testimony forming the backbone of the prosecution's organized conspiracy theory. According to prosecutors, the motive was Tiffany's desire to eliminate a former partner she saw as a threat to her reputation and financial stability. Olivier's testimony was the most important part of the trial. Under oath, he confirmed Cave and Tiffany's involvement in the alleged plot. However, during cross-examination, the defense exposed inconsistencies. For example, he couldn't clearly explain why, after Keith's death, he first drove home and only later returned for the body. The absence of definitive proof placing him face-to-face with Tiffany and Cave at the moment of the crime was another weakness. Questions also arose regarding Olivier's finances. A search of his home uncovered $30,000 in cash and expensive items, including a watch that had belonged to Keith. Olivier claimed the money came from his work and personal savings, but this explanation was met with skepticism. The defense argued that he could have been more than an accomplice, possibly even the direct perpetrator, acting alone. The prosecution maintained that the evidence formed a clear chain motive: planning, execution, concealment, and coordinated actions by the participants. The defense countered that not a single piece of physical evidence, no fingerprints, no DNA, no weapon, directly proved Tiffany had committed the crime or was present when it happened. Meanwhile, the court also considered the case of Kaveh Bayat. His defense categorically denied any involvement in the crime. He maintained his innocence, claiming he had been at home at the time of the case. His attorneys argued that the prosecution had not presented a single piece of physical evidence placing him at the scene. After weeks of testimony, the trial reached its decisive stage. The jury now had to decide whether the evidence presented was strong enough to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. After Olivier Adela testified, the murder charges against him were dismissed, and he was freed. However, his freedom didn't last long. As soon as he left the courthouse, federal immigration officers arrested him for violating U.S. immigration laws. A background check revealed that there was no record of American citizenship for someone named Olivier Adela. It turned out his real name was Mustafa Traore, and he had been living in the United States illegally for 20 years using forged documents and a stolen identity. He had fraudulently obtained U.S. citizenship, and much of his life story, including his claimed service in the French Foreign Legion, was false. After his arrest, Mustafa was transferred to a federal detention facility and charged with document fraud and identity theft. Unlike the Keith Green case, this trial attracted little public attention. During the hearings, Mustafa confessed that he had been using a fake name since the early 2000s. He explained to the court that he was forced to leave his country of origin because of traumatic experiences he had as a child. He said that when he was 9 years old, he was stabbed in the face while trying to protect his mother from an abusive attack by soldiers. His family escaped twice, first from Liberia, and then from the Ivory Coast. Mustafa said he changed his name and nationality to begin a new life, escape threats, and build a more secure future for his family. He insisted that he had never used the false identity to commit acts of violence and that his employment in the U.S. had always been legal. The court proceedings focused solely on immigration violations, not on the circumstances of Keith Green's death. Mustafa was found guilty of using forged documents and sentenced to 6 months in prison. The judge took into account his confession, cooperation with law enforcement, lack of a violent criminal record, and his personal history. The judge added that he hoped never to see Mustafa in court again and urged him not to revert to his old ways. This turn of events cast doubt on the reliability of Mustafa's testimony in the Green case. The concealment of his true identity, en invérifiable past, and his role as a witness with clear personal stakes all weakened the prosecution's position. None of the people connected to the events of 2016 ever gave a direct confession to committing the crime. On November 4, 2019, in San Mateo County, a jury found Tiffany Lee and Kaveh Bayat not guilty in the death of Keith Green. Despite a 3-year investigation, a widely publicized trial, and extensive testimony, prosecutors were unable to prove their guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The verdict shocked Green's family and led to significant media coverage and debate. Many journalists and people believed the verdict showed a serious problem with the justice system. The evidence: blood in a car, secret text messages, matching location data, and testimony from Mustafa made the acquittal seem illogical. However, the defense successfully weakened the prosecution's case by highlighting the lack of clear proof, the questionable nature of the evidence, and the untrustworthiness of a main witness who had lied about who he was. After Kaveh Bayat's acquittal, the district attorney decided not to retry him. Considering the previous verdict and the unlikelihood of a different outcome, they closed the case. While the legal case ended, Keith Green's family struggle continued. Colleen, the mother of Keith, sued Tiffany for emotional distress and financial losses resulting from her son's death. The lawsuit also concerned the future Keith's daughters. The court ruled that Tiffany Lee must pay more than $100,000 in damages. Custody of Keith's daughters was awarded to Tiffany's relatives. Once the case was resolved and her travel restrictions lifted, Tiffany left the United States. Media reports indicated she relocated to China. Her exact location and activities remain unknown, but sources claim she was living in a jurisdiction with no extradition treaty. She has never given an interview and has not publicly revisited the case. The Keith Green case made many people think the American justice system is unfair. News stories compared Green's case to other cases where rich people seem to get away with crimes, like assault or financial fraud. However, unlike other cases, there was no clear evidence to convict Tiffany. For Keith's family, neither public outrage nor a civil judgment could replace the one thing they wanted most: a sense of justice. Keith Green was laid to rest without a definitive answer to the question of who pulled the trigger. And his daughters, who lost their father, were left with memories clouded by unanswered questions. Love triangles have always been one of the deadliest sparks behind domestic crimes. Each person involved carries hidden motives, and from those motives, a web of lies begins to form, so tangled that even the most skilled investigators struggle to find the truth. The death of someone we love is always a tragedy. But in the world of crime, detectives know a painful reality. Even the most convincing tears can be nothing more than a mask, carefully staged to cover guilt. And this is not just theory. It happened in the life of one man whose story shocked an entire community. He had everything: love, friendship, success, and the admiration of those around him. On the surface, his life looked perfect. But beneath that image, dark secrets were brewing, and a deadly trap was being set. That man was Jamie Faith. To friends, he was warm and trustworthy. To neighbors, he embodied the American dream. Yet fate would drag him into a twisted web of passion, betrayal, and murder. A crime so brutal, it left everyone asking, who could want Jamie dead, and why? Stay with us as we uncover how a marriage that seemed built on love turned into a nightmare that ended in bloodshed, deception, and shocking betrayal. Jamie Faith was born in Madison, Wisconsin, on May 11, 1971. After graduating high school in 1994, he immediately pursued a bachelor's degree in computer science at university. He successfully graduated and spent several years working as a software engineer in his hometown, where he was recognized for his professionalism. He was a hardworking individual who frequently informed his family that he did not want to get married or have children. While he had many friends and was generally sociable, Jamie struggled in romantic relationships. However, those who knew him well described him as a decent, family-oriented man, friendly, warm-hearted, and an animal lover. In the fall of 2005, at the age of 34, Jamie traveled to Arizona, where he met Jennifer, a healthcare administrator. They hit it off immediately, talking late into the night, and their relationship quickly blossomed. Jamie moved to Arizona shortly after meeting Jennifer and easily bonded with her 8-year-old daughter, Amber. As their relationship grew, Jamie advanced professionally at American Airlines. Their life together appeared to be flourishing. Jamie has built a good relationship with both Jennifer and Amber. Treating the girl like a daughter, he contrasted sharply with Jennifer's previous partner, Amber's biological father, who had abandoned her when he learned of the pregnancy. Jennifer described her former partner as abusive and cruel, often instilling fear in her. After years together, Jamie and Jennifer decided to marry in Las Vegas in the summer of 2012. By 2017, they had been together for 12 years, of which 5 were as a married couple. Jamie landed a new high-level position at American Airlines, which required them to move from Arizona to Texas. They settled in Dallas and began building a new home in the Oak Cliff area of California, just 11 kilometers from the city, which Jamie believed was the perfect place to live. They are loved by the community, often hosting barbecues for the neighbors. Jamie remained a hard-working and kind person who enjoyed walking his dog each day. By October 2020, Jamie and Jennifer had been married for 8 years and had lived in their home for over 3 years. They celebrated their 15th anniversary since meeting with a special dinner on October 8. The next morning, Friday, October 9, 2020, Jamie, now 49, was preparing for work around 7:30 a.m. He took his beloved dog for a short walk, which was part of his daily routine. On this morning, however, an unforeseen tragedy awaited him. In the usually quiet neighborhood, there were few people out, and their house had security cameras that captured Jamie and Jennifer leaving with the dog. Unbeknownst to them, this walk would mark the final moments of Jamie's life. A black pickup truck was parked on the opposite side of the road when a stranger wearing a blue mask suddenly got out. He quickly raised a gun and aimed it at Jamie Faith. Everything happened in an instant. Jamie barely had time to react and was caught off guard. The assailant fired a pistol, emptying the magazine. Out of 9 shots, 7 bullets struck Jamie. After the gunshots rang out, women's screams echoed throughout the area. Neighbors from nearby homes ran out and saw Jennifer standing next to Jamie, looking horrified. Instead of fleeing, the attacker targeted Jennifer next. He knocked her to the ground, bound her wrists with duct tape, and attempted to remove her wedding ring. Their dog attacked the attacker, but he quickly fought back. By this time, several neighbors had gathered, watching the harrowing scene unfold. When the attacker noticed the witnesses, he stopped his assault, jumped back into his black pickup truck, and sped away. Meanwhile, multiple residents called the local police to report the incident. Emergency vehicles arrived quickly, but it was too late. Medics pronounced Jamie dead at the scene. He had been hit 3 times in the face, 3 times in the chest, and once in the stomach. He bled to death within minutes, and the autopsy later revealed that half of his wounds were fatal, indicating that the assailant was likely skilled with firearms, possibly having a military or law enforcement background. Jamie lost his life on October 9, 2020, just 10 meters from his front door, sending shockwaves through the neighborhood. Forensic teams began examining the area immediately. While detectives started gathering details about the incident, Jennifer, although largely unharmed, was in shock and received medical attention. The tape used to bind her wrists was sent for analysis. Despite not suffering physical harm, the community was concerned for Jennifer, who had witnessed her husband's murder. Through her tears, she spoke to the police, describing her attacker as a man in a blue mask, who opened fire on Jamie without warning. After running out of bullets, he tied her hands and forcibly took her wedding ring before fleeing in his truck. Most houses in the area were equipped with surveillance cameras, and neighbors were willing to share footage with the police. Although they couldn't identify the shooter, the truck was of particular interest. Even though the license plate was not visible, the make was recognizable, and a distinctive letter T on the rear window resembled the emblem of the Texas Rangers baseball team. When asked about anyone she knew who might be a fan, Jennifer struggled to recall. In her grief, Jennifer appeared on television, pleading for the killer to turn himself in. Later, she returned to the police station for further questioning. She broke down in tears and had difficulty communicating but then calmed down and provided more information. She noted she could see the killer's dark eyes through the mask and described his clothing and the sequence of the attack. After he bound her hands with tape, he hit her in the face. A detail corroborated by witnesses who had rushed to the scene. All that remained on Jennifer's body was a small abrasion. Jennifer insisted that the attack appeared to be an attempted robbery. However, there were several inconsistencies with this theory, particularly regarding the timing and the attacker's behavior. The suspect did not appear to be trying to conceal his actions, making it unlikely that this was a standard robbery. This raised questions about his true intentions. The police found it hard to believe that he would spontaneously choose to rob a couple while driving through a residential area, especially since they were just taking a walk with their dog. The attacker appeared overly prepared and unafraid, suggesting that his main target was Jamie, while the attempted theft of the ring and assault on Jennifer might have been a cover for his real motives. After the attacker shot Jamie, it seemed clear that he had a personal motive. especially since he didn't shoot Jennifer. As a result, Jennifer was re-interrogated. It was suggested that Jamie had made a dangerous enemy, though their identity remained unknown. Jennifer explained that she and Jamie had been happy together and celebrated their 15th anniversary just a day before his death, which was a joyous occasion for them. She described Jamie as a loving and calm person, making it hard to believe he had such a serious adversary. Following this, she and her daughter, Amber, set up a GoFundMe page to seek financial assistance for the funeral. As a housewife, Jennifer was facing significant financial challenges. The initiative quickly gained support, raising over $60,000 in a short time. Neighbors also helped by providing food. Jennifer shared her harrowing experience with the media, expressing hope that the killer would be caught soon. With the funds, she organized 2 funeral services for Jamie, one in Dallas and another in Phoenix. Meanwhile, detectives were diligently working to find the perpetrator. They discovered .45 caliber shell casings at the crime scene, along with Scotch tape and bullets removed from Jamie's body, which were sent for analysis. Review of surveillance footage was prioritized. They found a video taken a few hours before the attack, showing an unknown man walking near the fence of Jamie's home and appearing to survey the area. His attire closely matched that of the man who later shot Jamie and attacked Jennifer. His suspicious behavior led detectives to rule out the possibility of an accidental shooting. He clearly had an interest in Jamie's family, raising questions about his connection to them. In their search for clues, detectives requested Jennifer's mobile phone and her husband Jamie's phone. While Jamie's phone contained no significant information, suggesting he had no known conflicts, Jennifer's phone contained a suspicious text message sent weeks before the murder. In that message, she talked about a man named Darren, and the context suggested that their relationship was more than just casual friends. When contacted, this friend confirmed that they had heard about the possibility that Jennifer was romantically involved with someone else, but did not provide any further details. Law enforcement wanted to learn more about Darren Lopez, a 48-year-old Army veteran who had served in Iraq and Afghanistan. At the time of the murder, he was divorced and living alone on a farm in Cumberland Furnace, Tennessee, a small community, nearly 1,000 kilometers from Dallas. It raised questions when investigators discovered that Jennifer had been discussing Darren shortly before Jamie's death. They decided to explore the connection between Darren and Jennifer. It turned out that Darren and Jennifer were not just acquaintances. They had dated in high school and attended prom together. They continued their relationship into college until Darren's military service interrupted it. By that time, they had even talked about marriage. But they hadn't seen each other for decades, since their youth. After leaving the military in 2017 and subsequently divorcing his wife, Darren found himself isolated on his farm. He struggled to connect with his 4 children due to his military duties, which included a traumatic incident where he sustained a serious head injury from a bomb explosion. He became increasingly withdrawn and suffered from depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, worsened by financial struggles. To combat his loneliness, Darren started reconnecting with old friends online, including Jennifer. By late 2020, he reached out to her for the first time, and they quickly began chatting multiple times a day. Their conversations started off casually, reminiscing about the past. After about a month, Darren expressed that he had always cared for Jennifer, and she seemed to reciprocate his feelings. Their discussions became more personal, including sharing photos and talking about a potential future together on his farm, which raised suspicions among investigators. Detectives then noticed Darren's black Nissan pickup truck was the same make and model as the vehicle seen in CCTV footage near the crime scene. Alarmingly, the day before the murder, on October 8, 2020, Darren informed his family that he was going hunting. He drove 1,000 kilometers to Dallas in just 12 hours, which was verified by his car's navigation system and traffic cameras. He arrived in Oak Cliff early on the morning of October 9. After comparing photos, investigators found that Darren closely resembled a man seen looking through the fence at Jamie's home. During the 7 months prior, Darren and Jennifer communicated regularly, exchanging over 40,000 text messages and hundreds of hours of phone calls. However, Jennifer had deleted this data from her phone, making it difficult for investigators to retrieve it. While Darren's phone retained all the information, detectives continued to delve into their relationship, which appeared increasingly relevant to the case. Notably, just 28 hours after Jamie's murder, Jennifer and Darren met. Alarmingly, Jennifer sent Darren a text warning him that the police were suspicious and that they had obtained a description of him and his vehicle. She advised him to remove a decal of his favorite baseball team, which he did promptly. Before meeting Darren, detectives spoke with people who knew him. Many immediately confirmed that he had been driving with the sticker for a long time, but it had disappeared after the shooting of Jamie. The police arranged to meet Darren after discovering he owned a registered .45 caliber pistol. They executed a search warrant and found the weapon, which was sent for ballistics testing, as well as a blue mask matching eyewitness descriptions. Further analysis confirmed that this gun was used to shoot Jamie. In Darren's car, they also found several credit cards belonging to Jennifer. After reviewing the transactions, it became evident that Jennifer had been financially supporting Darren for a long time. She also bought him expensive electronic devices, a plane ticket, so he could go on vacation with the children, and asked him not to refuse anything. It emerged that Jennifer had misused funds raised on GoFundMe to support Darren and had not paid for Jamie's funeral, leaving the debt in her name. This revelation shocked the public, leading GoFundMe to offer refunds to donors once they learned of Jennifer's deceit. Darren Lopez was arrested on January 11, 2021, while playing tennis at home, and he was charged with first-degree murder. When questioned, Jennifer denied any involvement in the crime. However, her actions suggested she was more cunning than Darren. Despite being caught in lies, after Jamie's death, she distanced herself from others and refused to comment about her connection to Darren, contrasting sharply with her previous emotional interviews. Despite Darren's arrest, Jennifer continued to communicate with him, using a third party to send messages to him in prison. Several of these messages were intercepted, revealing her declarations of love for him and her commitment to support him. This behavior raised suspicions among detectives that she may have played a role in planning the crime, especially since Jamie held a life insurance policy worth $628,000, of which Jennifer was the sole beneficiary. Notably, this policy was issued only months before his death. While Darren was in custody, investigators seized Jennifer's cell phone, computer, and laptop, further corroborating their suspicions of her involvement in the murder plot. They discovered that she had created a fake account to communicate with Darren in order to confuse the investigation. She misled Darren with stories of ongoing abuse from Jamie, claiming he had physically harmed her and her daughter. She sends Darren pictures of injuries allegedly caused by Jamie, attempting to stir up hatred towards Jamie and justify her actions. Detectives looked into these statements, but none of Jamie's friends confirmed that he was abusive. They described Jamie as a friendly and peaceful person. Jamie's family was bewildered by these allegations and vehemently denied them. They did not understand why Jennifer stayed with Jamie for 15 years if she believed he was an abuser. Darren received photos through a fake account that Jennifer claimed were of her injuries. None of the photos showed her face, and she had not reported any incidents of domestic violence to the police. Some of the images were publicly accessible online, and her computer's search history showed she had looked them up. This was all part of a manipulation intended to convince Darren to kill Jamie. Even in prison, Darren believed Jennifer's lies until his lawyer presented evidence proving the photos were fake. Amber, Jennifer's daughter, also stated that Jamie had never harmed her. Darren was devastated to learn he had killed an innocent person, which destroyed his family. Fortunately, Darren started to speak out. He shared that in August 2020, he met Jennifer in person, and there, she asked him to kill Jamie. They carefully planned the attack, with Jennifer devising the main scenario. He executed the plan but arrived in Dallas earlier than expected, which led to him being captured on surveillance cameras near Jamie's house. Jennifer was arrested in February 2021, just a month after Darren She was initially charged with obstructing justice, but faced first-degree murder and solicitation of murder charges by September 2021. She denied her guilt and asserted that Darren was motivated by jealousy. However, the accumulating evidence against her led to her facing the death penalty. After months in jail, Jennifer decided to tell the truth when offered a plea deal that would reduce her sentence to life in prison for incitement to murder. She confessed that her accusations against Jamie about abuse were false, bringing relief to his family, who wanted to clear his name. On February 22, 2022, Jennifer Faith was sentenced to life in prison without parole as part of the deal. Following this, other men who had been involved with Jennifer spoke out, including Rick, who had dated her before Jamie. He recognized her manipulative nature, remembering how she had falsely accused Jamie of abuse while attempting to persuade him to take out a life insurance policy. Realizing the danger he had escaped, Rick described Jennifer as the most evil and greedy person he knew. In June 2023, Darren Lopez's trial began. Unlike Jennifer, he maintained his innocence, claiming he was manipulated by her. Evidence presented included false photos and statements alleging abuse by Jamie. Darren claimed he wanted to help Jennifer escape her troubled life, asserting that their relationship was purely friendly. His lawyer cited his post-traumatic stress disorder and a head injury from the Iraq War as contributing factors. The judge responded to the defense by stating that killing Jamie was unnecessary. Darren could have contacted law enforcement, who would have investigated the situation. He considered other options, suggesting that Jennifer run away with him, but she insisted that Jamie would keep pursuing her. Under her pressure, Darren ultimately agreed to eliminate Jamie. Attempts by Darren and his attorney to portray him as a victim were unsuccessful. At 51 years old, Darren was sentenced to 6 years in prison, with the possibility of parole in 2051.